seats. So is there not a tinge of disappointment as a result of your overall performance?
I think the strategy was right to run two candidates, and I would have been one of the people who would have had reservations about running two candidates, because I thought it was a little bit of a risk to run two candidates. I think the performance of both candidates have been exceptional, and I think what it does say is that we're well on the road that next time out we will have two candidates and probably two TDs. So is there a disappointment? Of course there is. I would love to have two Sinn Féin TDs out of this constituency, but I think our strategy was right, and I think it augurs well for the future.
Okay, I'll bring Paschal back in a moment. Noel, Merrick joins us again. Noel, good morning to you, Noel.
Morning.
Has it been difficult to swallow over the past 24 hours what has happened to Fine Gael nationally? And the funny thing is, and it was remarked upon last night, you may actually buck the trend in this constituency.
Yeah, well, I suppose Niall, coming in yesterday morning in the car into the count centre here, it was looking very, very bad for Fine Gael nationally. I mean, our General Secretary Tom Curran was on the RTE, and he was suggesting that Fine Gael will get something between maybe 44 and 48 seats. Now, this morning, I actually got up very early this morning at 6 o'clock, and I was looking at the results around the country from the various, from the different 40 constituencies. And I suppose that it's surprising really the way that the last seat is fallen to Fine Gael in a lot of constituencies that wasn't expected.
Right, so there's a little bit more optimism, is there?
There's more optimism, and some of the pundits on RTE this morning is calling it maybe 54 seats for Fine Gael.
Which is a big change.
It's a big change.
47 that Tom Curran was talking about yesterday.
44 to 47, yeah. So, I mean, if the RTE people has it right, or the people on the panel there, I mean, they're looking at maybe Fine Gael on possibly 54 seats, Fianna Fáil on early 40s, 43, 44. So the thing has changed around a lot, you know.
Okay, so you're still hopeful.
Still hopeful. I mean, the big discussion.
And this obviously could be key in when you're talking about rolling back these seats that you thought were lost. This could be a key if Reynolds and McLaughlin.
I suppose looking at yesterday morning, Fianna Fáil is, I think, around on 31% of the vote here, and Fine Gael on about 27%. So I suppose to look at the figures, an initial look at the figures, it suggests that Fianna Fáil was going to take two seats. Now I think the last seat is still very much up in the air and all to play for, but I think there's a good 50-50 chance at least between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil to take the last seat, and if Fine Gael is to take two seats here, I mean, it will not buck the trend, but it will certainly enhance the position of the party around the country and inform the next government.
Paschal, if I hear one more politician saying that it's time to reflect and it's time to regroup, I think I'll just emigrate.
Well, I'm not going to go down that road at all. In fact, I was again, having looked at the Sinn Féin scenario, I also looked at the fascinating development in Sligo between the Sligo candidates. I have to express a little concern. I'm not sure how my colleagues feel about this, or yourself. I have to express a little bit of concern about Eamon Scanlon, where he's currently located, situated figures-wise. He's on 5961 and Jerry Reynolds is on 6797. There's clear water between them. There's 800 votes. And I'm not too concerned about Tony McLaughlin, who's only 400 votes ahead of Eamon, because you're going to have the Marie Casserly transfer that I think is going to substantially, I think it's agreed, substantially help Tony McLaughlin. All I'm a bit concerned about is that the intertransfer of the Sligo votes are focused mainly around Sligo town to a degree. And Eamon is a little out of the loop down in Ballymote, and I would have, let's say I'd be more comfortable if he was a little bit higher than he is at the moment. I just have a bit of concern, and I'm increasingly of the view that Jerry Reynolds is a major player here. in this regard. So I would go along some of the way with Noel, and he's right about this last seat. But I'm just expressing a concern at this early stage, and I'm not sure how some of our colleagues feel about, just specifically about Eamon Scanlon's prospects.
Yeah, okay. Well, you've been campaigning with Paddy O'Rourke, and there was a lot of speculation. There was more analysis going on in the bar last night, I can tell you, Paschal, than here throughout here all day. But again, they were looking, and it's a long way down the line of O'Rourke and where his votes are going to go if and when he's eliminated. And there was a feeling that it might not be as beneficial to Scanlon as some may have hoped.
Yeah, you see, Fine Gael are saying that if you extricate the Cavan vote that Paddy got, that Jerry Reynolds is the next available candidate geographically, and therefore he's going to get more substantial vote from Paddy O'Rourke than would be ordinarily the case because of the geography. I was of the opinion, and it'd be interesting maybe get if any of our listeners, particularly those that are in Cavan, West Cavan, that are listening to us, that would have been involved in the campaign. I have been of the view that there was a very strong party loyalty in West Cavan up to the election, and that the votes that were being distributed to Jerry Reynolds and to Paddy O'Rourke were a party vote rather than a geographical vote only. And therefore, if that logic to follow through, well then, in the case of Paddy's elimination, there should be a strong Fianna Fáil transfer out of the Cavan vote. But Fine Gael sources are saying no.
Right. Michael, you wanted to make a point.
Yeah, it sometimes would be informed by the kind of vote management practices of the parties and the candidates. But it was kind of very clear, certainly in North Leitrim, that both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, if there was indeed designated areas for each of the candidates, they were breached because we had all of the candidates from all of the parties certainly appeared in Manorhamilton. Now, perhaps this was a planned thing, and maybe it's a good thing, but it does make it different. It does make it difficult to kind of predict where the transfers are going to go to, because maybe the home geographic rule won't strictly apply where you had this kind of, where there was a free-for-all in at least one area of the constituency. I don't know what happened in other areas of the constituency. So maybe it's something that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael might like to comment on.
Okay. John, on that and what Paschal has said.
Can I just remind us here, because there are a whole lot of scenarios here that can possibly happen, and I don't wish to add further to what may or may not happen, Eamon Scanlon, but I'm still of the view that Guckian got 714 of his votes that he has to distribute. He got those in County Leitrim. Now, I expect that they will stay in County Leitrim. We've seen that already with the distributions we've had so far. O'Hara is another one. She got 440 votes in County Leitrim. I expect them to stay in County Leitrim. Now, we only have 3 candidates in County Leitrim who are to benefit from those. Now, assuming that 1,100 votes that's in County Leitrim breaks evenly between the 3 candidates, between Paddy O'Rourke, between Jerry Reynolds and Merrick and Keaney, that's 400 votes to each of them. And if we look at the figures, there are only 450 votes between Eamon Scanlon and Paddy O'Rourke. So, I'm not sure yet that we are looking at the distribution of the elimination or exclusion of Paddy O'Rourke.
And you said
it could be the exclusion of Eamon Scanlon, which will put a whole... Now, I know the panel may not agree with that, but it is a scenario that is mathematically possible. And the geography of the situation is that the votes are staying in County Leitrim.
No, none of them agree with you. Noel, and I'll come to Pat. Noel, why not? You don't agree?
Well, I don't agree in so far as that, mathematically it might be possible, but in practical terms it's not possible, because, no candidate would attract that level of transfers, is the first thing, even though the location is fairly close to them. But, we're still ignoring the big thing here, that there's so many big hitters in certainly 2 or 3 big hitters left in Sligo to be eliminated. And I think when they come into play, I mean, John Siri, while
you can see him grinning at you on the screen.
I know, I'm watching him here with one eye. I can't see him with my right eye, but I'm watching him with the left. But I think his theory might, he might have a different view on it maybe after 2 or 3 counts.
Okay. And Paschal, you're shaking your head.
No, I see where John was coming from. A mixture of pragmatism and mischievousness about this.
There'll be no mischievousness on a Sunday morning.
Having said that, I agree with one half of his theory. It's a good academic point. And I have no doubt whatsoever he's right about the transfers out of Leitrim, and I think that Paddy O'Rourke is going to be staying in for much longer than perhaps a lot of us had given any credence for earlier on. But what about the Perry transfers?
Sorry, just 1 second, Paschal, just find out what's going on here.
Bree, Declan.
Yes, we're into
plus 55. Giving him a total of 3,454. 3,454. Casserly Marie, non-party, plus 122. Giving her a total of 3,067. 3,067. Gallagher Nigel, Anti-Austerity Alliance, People Before Profit, plus 64. Giving him a total of 2,014. 2014. Kenny Martin, Sinn Féin, plus 214, giving him a total of 6,687, 6687. McManus Chris, Sinn Féin, plus 28, giving him a total of 4,865, 4865. McSharry Mark, Fianna Fáil, plus 86, giving him a total of 9,122, 9122. McLaughlin Tony, Fine Gael, plus 33, giving him a total of 6,371, 6371. O'Hara Bernie, non-party, plus 126, giving her a total of 1,470, 1470. O'Keefe Susan, the Labour Party, plus 24, 2,060, 2060. O'Rourke Paddy, Fianna Fáil, plus 147, giving him a total of 5,658, 5658. Perry John, Fine Gael, plus 21, giving him a total of 4,487, 4487. Reynolds Gerard, Fine Gael, plus 147, giving him a total of 6,944, 6944. Scanlon Eamon, Fianna Fáil, plus 33, giving him a total of 5,994, 5994. Non-transferable papers not effective, 54. As no candidate has reached the quota on this count, there is no surplus for distribution. I will now exclude the lowest candidate and distribute her votes. Bernie O'Hara's votes of 1,470. Thank you.
Okay, well that was nice and quick and it caught us all on the hop. That's the 5th count. That's the distribution of Guckian's votes of 1,154, and it just goes back to what John Comiskey was saying a moment ago. Paschal,
I think John's comments have been borne out in that the significant transfer stayed within Leitrim. And again, I have to say that going back to my comments about Jerry Reynolds, he's very transfer friendly. He's picking up. He got 147 votes there.
As did Paddy O'Rourke, exactly.
Has been consistently. Now Paddy also got 147 votes. He'd be council colleague, and obviously some of that vote was going to go back to him inevitably as well. And Martin Kenny similarly got the highest transfer at 214. But I'm not surprised for listeners, as I think said yesterday, Des Guckeen is very much a one-off. A true independent, as he says himself. The political makeup of Leitrim County Council is currently that
he will be aligned to the left.
Fianna Fáil and 3 of the 4 elected independents in Leitrim are all part of the ruling group, and Councillor Guckeen opted out of that and is a regular and quite ferocious critic of not only that particular political complexion
so
of the council,
it would make sense that Keaney will get the transfer.
So therefore it would be the very left, very anti-government, very anti the establishment, and therefore I'm not surprised that Martin would have picked up the vote that he did. But it is significant that, taking up John's point again, that of the 700 Leitrim votes that were accrued to Des Guckin from our tally, that you're looking at 75% of them
went to Leitrim.
Stayed in Leitrim. Yeah.
Okay, and that could be key at the end of the day. Okay, Michael, do you want to make a comment? And I go
to
John?
I don't think there are any huge surprises here, because both in terms of geography and in terms of kind of political inclination, the votes would have gone there. The transfers would have gone as I would have expected there. I'm not sure though that informs us. It does inform us in relation to the rest of the transfers and how they're going to go. I'm not sure the principles that applied here can apply in the rest of the transfers. We'll see.
Okay, John, you're nodding your head because it bears out, as Paschal said, what you were saying just a few moments ago before Paul O'Grady's announcement of that fifth count.
Yes, indeed, and more importantly, it has narrowed the gap between Scanlon and O'Rourke. We're now down to 340.
You won't let this one go, John.
Despite however mischievous it was, and we still have two more Leitrim candidates to be eliminated. Where they got substantial votes in Leitrim to go yet. I'm still of the opinion that we're coming to 11 counts before we have anything substantial. Okay. And then it'll be a decision maker by Mark McSharry's surplus.
Okay, and we're only on the sixth count. Noel, do you want to make a comment in relation to Guckin's distribution there?
Well, look at there was nothing really hugely significant in it. I mean, I suppose the only thing to say on Des Guckin is he's probably one of the candidates that probably canvassed the most of the constituency.
And he had done so before the election was even announced, which was quite incredible. And the funny thing is, he said that to us on a couple of occasions, and you kind of think what politicians say with a pinch of salt. But the amount of people said to me that Des Guckin had called to their house in the furthest, remotest areas of County Sligo, for example.
I live at Carrow, and he called to us last October, one Saturday, I think it was last October.
That bears out what I was saying.
I was speaking to a colleague who lives in Cliffney, and he called to him one Sunday afternoon in August. End of August, and I was speaking to another friend of mine in Enniscrone. He called over there sometime in November, I think. So I think he said he knocked on 99 to 100% of the doors, and he certainly put in the effort. He put in a huge effort, huge campaign for an independent. It was a huge task to take on.
Yeah.
And he certainly. He'll know the geography of Sligo Leitrim at the end of this anyway.
Well, it's funny you should mention geography. He used to teach me geography in St Mel's College in Longford many, many years ago, so that's where I know Des Guckin from. Sorry, Michael.
I mean, the rest of us have teams of canvassers and that, and you have the support of that network of people. But for a man to go out on his own, and in many cases he was on his own around the area, and it shows that he has great belief in himself and his politics. And I think he's done a good day's work, a good year's work for democracy. Yeah.
Okay, I'll come to Bernie O'Hara's performance in a minute because she's eliminated. Francie, we have a couple of questions coming into the panel as per usual, and look, feel free to ask any questions, and they may have to do with yesterday, they may have to do with tallies or how people think it's going to go today. We do like to answer as many queries as we can get. And remember, I know people are texting in already, our live stream is up and running. You want to watch all this live, go oceanfm.ie is the website, oceanfm.ie, and you can watch the entire proceedings live from the count here in the Clarion Hotel.
That's right, Niall, and maybe some of these for the panelists, so I'll just go through them and then you can pick and choose, I suppose, what you want. Looking nationwide at Fine Gael, they seem to be picking up a lot of the last seats in the constituency where they weren't expected to. Is there a possibility that McLaughlin and Reynolds could be a lot more transfer friendly than originally thought, and Fine Gael will get 2 seats? Possible scenario On the elimination of Gallagher, O'Keefe and Castlereagh, Bree will move above Perry. Then on his elimination, Bree moves above O'Rourke. Is that possible, says Bernard. Somebody else was saying, if McSharry is elected with 200 of a vote surplus, how do they decide which 200 votes to distribute? So that's kind of just, you might talk about that in general. Also, can you ask John, does he think Chris McManus will get a seat? The reason Sinn Féin has done well is due to the fact that the area was extended into Donegal and Cavan. Because of this, we could get 2 TDs in history, which would be history in the making, says Joe. I would totally disagree that Reynolds will get more transfers than Scanlon from O'Rourke. Firstly, a good chunk of the votes will stay with Fianna Fáil, and secondly, Scanlon is a very well-known character. Here's one for the panel. Do they think that there were too many independents in the Sligo-Leitrim area? If we had one good independent candidate, would that have been better, and they could be in with a chance for a seat, says Joe. I would agree with John Comiskey. The Leitrim voters will keep their vote in Leitrim, says somebody else. And any chance you could give the results from Tubbercurry polling stations? I missed them yesterday. What we might do later on, when there's a bit of a lull in proceedings here, we'll go through boxes, if that's all right. So, if you want to take some of them questions, any of the panellists can. And if you have any more questions, 083 3500 530, at Ocean FM Ireland on Twitter, just use the hashtag Sligo Leitrim, or on Facebook, Ocean FM Ireland.
You see, lads, they're hanging on your every word. Everything you say has been analysed and scrutinised. Who wants to take some of those questions? Well, first up, sorry, Paschal.
Sorry, just take the surplus one and give the lads maybe.
Yeah, the McSharry question, that would be.
Because it is difficult.
And people don't really understand this.
My father, God be good to him, always used to say that the single biggest flaw, and maybe John will have a view on this, the single biggest flaw in the proportional representation system was the distribution of surpluses.
And he's absolutely right.
Very unfair. What will happen with that 200 surplus that let's use for the purposes of mathematics is that the returning officer will go to all the bundles, say the 12,800, because I think the quota is around 12,500.
Yep.
So say there's 12,800 McSharry votes, and they're all in bundles of 1,000. And what he will do is he will go over to one bundle, picked at randomly, and it could be from Ballyshannon, or it could be from Enniscrone, and he will pick that bundle, and he will then disseminate that bundle on the basis of the percentage of number twos to each of the candidates. That's it in a nutshell.
I sense a row coming on here because Noel and John are shaking their heads furiously saying that's not the case.
Okay.
I have to say I'm with Paschal on this. That's my understanding of how it happens.
Yeah, well, look at there'll be no row, first of all, Niall.
Yes.
You have to be nice to one another now because what might happen nationally.
I understand that too. John will have something further to say on this. My understanding is, and I suppose we should get clarification from some of the officials here, is what Paschal is saying is the system that used to happen in the past, up until maybe an election or 2 elections ago. But my understanding at this stage, and John may want to agree with me or disagree with me on it, but my understanding is that if, say, Ray McSharry gets a surplus, or Mark McSharry gets a surplus of 200 votes, and should those 200 votes come from, let's say, Paddy O'Rourke is the most likely place, and Paddy O'Rourke on that stage is on 6,000 votes. My understanding is that all Paddy O'Rourke's number votes has to be looked at and divided by the 200 that is over quota. I'm not sure if I'm explaining this right now, but that it's not just a random sampling. It's more scientific than that now. It's the reason behind it is that Mark McSharry's surplus came from Paddy O'Rourke. It didn't come from Mark McSharry. It didn't come from anybody else. His surplus came from Paddy O'Rourke, and as Paddy O'Rourke's twos proportionally is going to decide. That's where the 200 votes, if it's 200 votes, is going to come from.
Okay, John. You agree with Noel?
I agree with Noel in totality.
So this has been changed then, you're saying?
This is my understanding of it. Now, I'm not saying for definite that it has that, but my understanding is, and go back to what Noel was saying, I'll try and simplify it, and we're only assuming that it's Paddy O'Rourke. Assuming that Merrick McSherry got 500 transfers from Paddy O'Rourke in order to elect him, then it's that 500 that remain on the top, and to distribute the 200 surplus, they go through those 500 votes. And if in that instance that a candidate, let's say Merrick Keaney, gets 50% of those 500 that came from Paddy O'Rourke, maybe as a 3 or a 4 or a 5, or well, in Paddy O'Rourke's case it'll be a 3. So if he gets 50% of that 500, then he gets 50% of the 200 that's the surplus. So he gets 100 votes. But it's the last bundle. I agree with Paschal. What was they didn't go through all the papers. They did in the early stages of PR. They went through all the papers of the candidate, but then they started this thing of selecting at random. And it now is the last bundle remaining on top, and that's where I'm in agreement with Noel.
Yeah,
now, we may be wrong.
All right. There was another question there in relation to: is it possible that Bree could stay in the race before Perry's eliminated? Anybody want to take that? Do you remember that question?
Yeah, I remember the question. Well, he's on 3-4-5-4, and the question was, could he stay in the race ahead of
John Perry?
Of John Perry. Yes, I think that's absolutely feasible on the basis of the distribution and taking account of the comments made earlier by my Sinn Féin sources about the distribution of the 2,000 Gallagher votes. That if they're not going to Sinn Féin, well, then it would seem to me that they're going to go to Declan Bree because he will be the last remaining left-wing candidate. That will be there. As I say, it's an interesting development because it means that Declan Bree will continue on this count and will have a very strong bearing then on the distribution of the Sligo.
Michael,
I agree with that. It's mathematically possible, and I think it's realistically possible as well. And it would certainly change our projections, I think, in relation to the destination of the seats were that to happen with Declan. But it's certainly mathematically and realistically possible that could happen, yeah.
Okay, and the question about the independent candidates, which is a very relevant one, it came in from Joe, I think, saying there were too many independent candidates. Presumably Joe would like to see an independent candidate elected, and his point was there were too many independent candidates, maybe in the Sligo town area. I don't know if that's what he said, Francie, but there were too many independent candidates to make an impact for an independent to get elected.
I don't know. I mean, I take that one. A democracy means that people have choice. I think it's a very healthy sign of a democracy where you have people putting themselves forward. It takes guts and it takes money for people to put themselves forward for election. And it takes an awful lot of effort, not just for the candidates themselves, but for the people working for them. More are going to be disappointed than are going to achieve success. And I think it's a healthy sign of a democracy where you have people who are prepared to put themselves forward.
Okay.
Niall,
Paschal.
The independent used to be what it said on the tin, independent, but it's no longer that. If you look at the list that we have here in front of us, and that the voters' choice in this constituency, in that Marie Casserly would be truly independent. Nigel Gallagher was part of the left-wing grouping,
AAA.
Des Cooking pure independent. Bernie O'Hara, pure independent. O'Hara was Green. The Green, it was party. He wasn't independent. So, what are you looking at here with Damon Sweeney? About four independents. And Michael is right. That's what democracy is about. And people have the right to decide whether they're going to align themselves with a party or whether they're going to stand on their own platform.
Okay.
And then they put it to the people. Otherwise, I mean, what is the alternative to what our questioner is suggesting? That it be manufactured, manufactured candidates?
John.
Yes, and if we look at the transfers, we see a strong transferring between the independents, although it's geographical, as we've been saying, but there is still a strong transfer to other independents there as well. And what I do notice on these figures is that the number of non-transferable votes is so small and come back to another question that was asked directly of me there about Chris McManus. Yes, I still think that Chris McManus could possibly take that Sinn Féin seat.
And just in case people are tuned in and wondering what's happened or wonder what is happening today, we're at the 6th count. No seats filled. It is expected that later on, maybe this afternoon, that Mark McSharry will be elected here in Sligo Leitrim, and there are 5 candidates in the running for the remaining 3 seats, and they are Tony McLaughlin and Martin Kenny and Chris McManus and Eamon Scanlon.
Jerry Reynolds.
Could I posit a question here?
Sure. As long as it's not a tough one to me, I don't mind.
Well, and to everybody, we're all assuming Mark McSharry is going to get elected. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But just for academic purpose.
Unless you want to go down John's route of things being mathematically possible or impossible.
Well, yeah, maybe I am. He needs, as we stand, 3,500 extra votes. Where is he going to get them? Where are they going to come from? Just as an academic exercise.
Okay. So what you're saying is that it is, and you said to me yesterday, it's not possible that all 4 can be elected without reaching the quota. You're changing your mind on that?
Well, there was a situation, I think, last night in one of the counts where there was one candidate that reached the quota and the other 3 were then elected without reaching the quota. But I think that they have whatever is left. In fact, in theory, maybe John and Noel, who brought a newer and fresher approach to the surplus issue, and I stand corrected if their point is well made. Say, for example, that there are only 4 candidates remaining who haven't reached the quota, and everybody else is gone. Well, then they automatically fill the seats. Isn't that right?
Yes,
I think. But the question about the 3,500, where are they going to come from?
Well, first and foremost, Paschal, if we look at it and we look at the transfers in it, we have 16,000 votes that are to come into play in this year. We have 6,000 that Eamon Scanlon has. We have 6,000 that Paddy O'Rourke has. They are Fianna Fáil votes, and we'll have at a minimum of 4,000 from Declan Bree. Now they are Sligo Town votes. So by the time Declan Bree is eliminated, that's 16,000 votes, and I don't care what happens, given how much dislike is towards Mark McSharry by anybody who voted for Declan Bree or any of the other candidates. He's doing very poorly if he can't transfer a fifth of those to bring him over the quota. That's only 20%.
Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take our quick break for our 10 o'clock news and our obits as well. We'll be back here in the Clarion Hotel in a few moments. Wanted to speak briefly about Bernie O'Hara, but she has been eliminated, and where those votes might go. I think the feeling is they'll scatter everywhere because of the nature of her candidacy. Let's see. Back in a couple of minutes here at the Clarion Hotel in Sligo. Welcome back, Clarion Hotel. It's, what is it now, just coming up to 10:15. We're waiting on the sixth count here in Sligo, Leitrim. And we're trying to get a perspective on how long this will go on for today. We're hearing, we shouldn't really say, we're hearing maybe 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, which won't be too bad, I suppose, Paschal, if we get out of here by then.
By the way, in the context of the question I asked earlier before the news about where Mark Mulcahy would get his transfers, I should have qualified the question in that I was talking about the Sligo transfers in the context of what we have to deal with over the next couple of counts. The Marie Casserly transfer, the Declan Bree transfer, although that question now means that he might be in the race longer than we assumed. Certainly the Gallagher transfer, but looking at the pattern of Mark's transfers out of Sligo town, he has done quite well.
I'll just interrupt you there, Paschal, to bring us a sixth count. No, sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Yeah, was there a bit of a false alarm? Yeah, inevitably happens.
Right, Paschal, you were making a point. You were talking about Sligo transfers in the context of Mark Mulcahy.
In the context of Mark Mulcahy, and but he's been very transfer friendly so far. Admittedly, the biggest share of transfers he got was from Filan, and I think it was already established yesterday, a general consensus that would have been a kind of a business vote or a centrist vote as distinct from a left-wing vote, but we're going into the territory next now of the Bernie O'Hara vote, and I would agree with the consensus across the table and what John was saying, that
they'll spread all over the place.
Well, no, I think a certain amount of it will stay. We haven't got our breakdown, our computer here showing us a breakdown from yesterday, but I mean, Bernie O'Hara is
Drum here, she's in.
And I think that a significant amount of that 1,500 going to stay in Leitrim. The other aspect of it is, and I don't know whether anybody else has an opinion on this, the pro-life issue didn't come up on the doors to a large extent. In fact, in North Leitrim, I got more people talking to me about fracking than I did about pro-life. And is it because people on the doorsteps wanted to keep their opinions to themselves on the pro-life issue? Because I think that there's been a kind of a change, not of attitudes, but maybe of less exposure to committing to pro-life on the doorsteps.
Okay, here's the sixth count.
The following is the result of the sixth count, which consisted of the distribution of Bernie O'Hara's votes of 1,470. Bree Declan, plus 93, giving him a total of 3,547. Casserly Mary, non-party, plus 187, giving her a total of 3,254, 3,254. Gallagher Nigel, Anti-Austerity Alliance People Before Profit, plus 60, giving him a total of 2,074, 2,074. Kenny Martin, Sinn Féin, plus 94, giving him a total of 6,781, 6,781. McManus Chris, Sinn Féin, plus 44, giving him a total of 4,909, 4,909. McSharry Mark, Fianna Fáil, plus 325, giving him a total of 9,447, 9,447. McLaughlin Tony, Fine Gael, plus 69, giving him a total of 6,440, 6,440. O'Keefe Susan, the Labour Party, plus 36, giving her a total of 2,096, 2,096. O'Rourke Paddy, Fianna Fáil, plus 141, giving him a total of 5,799, 5,799. Perry John, Fine Gael, plus 46, giving him a total of 4,533, 4,533. Reynolds Gerard, Fine Gael, plus 83, giving him a total of 7,027, 7,027. Scanlon Eamon, Fianna Fáil, plus 132, giving him a total of 6,126,6126. Non-transferable papers not effective, 160. No candidate has reached the quota on this count. As there is no surplus for distribution, I will now exclude the lowest candidate and distribute his votes. Gallagher Nigel, 2,074 votes. And the next count will consist of that distribution. Thank you.
Okay, that was the sixth count. Paschal, you didn't pick that one, did you?
No,
Look at the transfer there to McSharry.
Yes, I think though I have said from early on that he's very transfer friendly. There's no question.
Quite obviously.
And name recognition obviously is playing a big part now. But I'd like to maybe, if we could, get what the breakdown of the votes of Bernie's votes in Sligo and in Leitrim. I think
John might have that, but
have those. But
just before, go ahead.
Also, I'm again, because I'm keeping an eye on Scanlon, which I was saying earlier, a little bit of concern about whether he's transfer friendly or not. He got a significant transfer there of 132, which has put him up on 6126. Again, it raises questions for maybe later on.
Okay, would you have predicted that, John? Significant transfer to Mark McSharry and also Eamon Scanlon getting a good slice of Bernie O'Hara's vote.
Yes, but more significantly, look at the vote that stayed within Leitrim there. I said earlier, 719 votes came from Leitrim, 144 came from Cavan, and they significantly have stayed there, with Keaney, O'Rourke and Reynolds being major beneficiaries, and the other 50% of Bernie O'Hara, the other 30% of Bernie O'Hara's votes came from Sligo, and they have stayed in Sligo significantly. That Eamon Scanlon now, is it setting a trend? I see Eamon now becoming transfer friendly, but it may just be on the transfer of Bernie, given the candidacy of Bernie.
Why? I mean, people will want to know why. Why is he transfer friendly? Why is Mark McSharry transfer friendly from Bernie O'Hara?
Maybe I'll offer a theory here. If there was to be a contest for profile across the four counties, Mark McSharry would win it hands down. He postered it to an extraordinary extent, and in fact, on the way down, I think on one of the days, the election day, I think that he did a repostering campaign overnight across the constituency. And I noticed more posters up for Mark McSharry that I thought I hadn't seen in the previous days. And rather interestingly, on the way down for yesterday, he was the only candidate that had nearly all of his posters removed. They were nearly all gone overnight. So I think name recognition played a big factor.
Okay, John,
in terms of
you would agree with that?
That's exactly what's happening here. And again, we see that whilst the number this time of non-transferable votes has increased, but they are votes that Bernie O'Hara picked up along the way. And what we're seeing is now that when people went in and made their choices, they're 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at 5,
5,
6, 7, 8. And they're looking down the ballot paper and they're seeing Mark McSharry, Eamon Scanlon, Tony McLaughlin, Jerry Reynolds. They're looking at the names that they recognise, as Paschal has said, and that's where they're given the preference. And the pin falls with the first name that you recognise. It's not a deliberate choice, but the thing is that they're exercising democracy. They're continuing their preferences.
Could I also, maybe it's making a political point here, in the 2011 election, Fianna Fáil grievously lost seats as a result of the toxic nature of the brand, and it was because we failed to get transfers that we lost anything up to 10 to 15 seats, particularly on the later counts. That seems to have been totally reversed, especially in this constituency, and John is right. We're now looking at 4th, 5th and 6th preferences, and first of all name recognition kicked in, but it also I think signifies that the toxicity that surrounded the Fianna Fáil brand has disappeared, literally has just disappeared, and is not relevant. And perhaps as John says, with Eamon picking up that significant transfer, maybe as we look at the next few transfers and the fact that there seems to be a geographical spread here, geography is playing a big part in the transfers, that maybe we might see some changes now with the Sligo-based candidates, as distinct from the Leitrim ones.
We'll repeat the figures from the sixth count in a moment, but suffice to say they are on our website. If you want to follow the count, they're on our website, oceanfm.ie. You can watch live on oceanfm.ie. You can follow us on Twitter at OceanFM Ireland, hashtag Sligo Leitrim, and we're also on Facebook, Ocean FM Ireland. Michael Colreavy, your thoughts on the distribution there of Bernie O'Hara's votes?
I was a little bit surprised by some of the votes. There is still the geographic thing there. The geographic factor is still there. But I was surprised at the rate of transfer to Fianna Fáil there, because I would have expected that more of those transfers would have gone to the independents or to Sinn Féin party. I'm not sure what sort of a pattern it sets for the remaining candidates who will be eliminated and the transfer of their votes.
Noel, you've had a time to consider that transfer as well. Anything strikes you about that?
No, I think Fianna Fáil did extremely well there. Greater than I think any of us had expected. I mean, they're obviously party is maybe seen a bit more pro-life than some of the other parties, but
I don't know if that will be the case or not. But
I'm not suggesting that it is the case at all, but I'm just saying what the transfer suggests that.
Yeah.
But I think the whole thing is going to change now with the next eliminations, the Sligo based.
Yeah, which we've been talking about
candidates.
About 12 hours ago, we've been talking about the significance of that.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah.
Nigel Gallagher, of course, we were talking to Nigel. We might rerun that interview later on this morning. Nigel Gallagher, first-time candidate, and a good performance in this election. He polled 1,768 first preferences. Not bad for and he was the youngest candidate in the field and a first-time candidate, but he's been eliminated after the sixth count. John.
Yes, and what's very noticeable here is that Nigel Gallagher very, very nearly caught Susan O'Keefe. She very nearly, there's only 22 votes in it, and Susan O'Keefe being the high-profile candidate. We talked about name recognition, and we go back to that now. But to be within 22 votes of a major Labour candidate is an achievement in itself.
Yeah, who, of course, was on the Banking Inquiry Committee, as we know, was a high-profile senator who was the main mover behind the Yates 150 celebrations as well. Indeed, it was interesting on national radio this morning to hear that I think the majority of Oireachtas members on the Banking Inquiry have lost their seats or have not got seats in this election, and the feeling was that maybe, and it wasn't their fault, they may have taken their eye off the ball on constituency work, which perhaps isn't fair. But anyway, Noel, do you want to make a point?
That is true. I mean, the chairman was very high profile in Cork South Central, and he has lost his seat. But I suppose, look at it, it wasn't Labour's election, and Labour has lost seats. They've lost high profile people. Joe Costello, as we spoke about just originally from
Given, County Sligo, yeah.
And Alex White, his mother came from near Lougharrow there, so he's very closely associated with Sligo and big name, a minister, and he's gone as well. So look at, I think we have to await these transfers.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's interesting. I think it was John or Paschal said earlier, John, wasn't it? You were talking about the where Gallagher's votes will go, and it was a feeling. Was it you were saying there's a feeling that they might not transfer strongly to Chris McManus as some would have expected.
That's the feeling on it, but I see them making their way back to Chris McManus via Declan Bree eventually.
Yeah,
they may not do it this time, and we may also at this stage see a greater number of non-transferable votes as well, given the fact that we're gone down to 7. We're now 7, 8, 9 is the preference that we're looking at.
Yeah. Michael?
I hope that there would continue to be transfers to Sinn Féin from both Nigel and from Declan's, where Declan got the transfers from Nigel. I haven't quantified it, but I expect that there'd be a good transfer rate from it.
Okay, Francie, any more questions coming in yet? No, Francie, any more questions coming in to the panel?
Just in relation to the...
Sorry, Michael, you want to make a point, and we'll bring Francie in with a few questions.
Just in relation to the point that was made in relation to Labour and the difficulties that they're facing in it, I think there's probably a salutary lesson there for any smaller party or group who would enter into negotiations with either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael in relation to the future governance of the country, which we'll have some fun over the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, that's putting it mildly. Right, Francie, what else is
Just in relation to Bernie O'Hara's votes transferring to McSharry, it's because McSharry's connections, his family connections from Killavuggy and Drumahare, and McManus canvassed well around Ballintoher as well. And somebody else said Bernie O'Hara got 600 first preference votes in Sligo, and 457 of these came back to McSharry and Scanlon pro-life votes.
That's a good point.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good point, and Noel referred to it as well. Yeah, maybe we're overlooking. Maybe you're right, Noel. Maybe they are pro-life votes, and acknowledgement that Eamon Scanlon and Mark McSharry are both pro-life and stand for pro-life.
Well, look at, that's just a quick conclusion that I've come to. I'm not suggesting that they're more pro-life, those candidates, than any of the other candidates, but I think, there is a trend that they have gone in substantial numbers to Fianna Fáil, to the three Fianna Fáil candidates, much more so than the Fine Gael or Sinn Féin candidates. So I suppose it's just a quick conclusion there that I came to.
Okay, there's lots of... Francie, anything else? No. Michael, I might put it to you. There's a suggestion maybe that if this election had been called in November, that the situation facing Fine Gael wouldn't be so today, that Fine Gael would perform much better, and that Keaney and the party dithered over the staging of the election. Have you got any views on that, or was this inevitable?
I wouldn't hold with that at all.
Sorry, one second. We'll just get your microphone up. Just up there, Michael. Thanks.
I wouldn't hold with that view at all. I do believe that Fine Gael and Labour both began to believe what they were saying themselves, and it was not in touch with the reality of people's lives. And I don't think the reality of people's lives, for example, in the Northwest here, was any different in November than it is now. I think perhaps if shorter notice had been given, but I believe the minimum notice is 3 weeks anyway.
That's correct, yeah.
And I think most of the parties were out well before November, out canvassing and working hard to make sure. So I don't think there would have been a substantially different result.
John.
In 1932, the election was called on the 29th of January and it was held on the 16th of February, although in this constituency it had to be postponed due to the tragic death of Jerry Reynolds' grandfather. But I do think, I agree that the economic situation didn't change anything on the ground since November. I agree with Michael on that, in that that didn't change. But I think what did change was the indecisiveness of Keaney in making a decision. People were all expecting, of all parties, were expecting it to be in November, and he dithered and was indecisive, and he gave people time to reflect on his leadership, and then that combined with all the mistakes that he made through this campaign as well. For the Labour Party, then in November, the only thing that it gave them was that they had an extra couple of months' Dáil salary, because for them it was written, everybody knew about it, but it was the indecisiveness of Keaney as Taoiseach.
Yeah,
all right. Okay, I'll bring Pádraig Carty in at this stage, the master of the tallies. Pádraig, as we know, IT Sligo lecturer. What's going to happen today, Pádraig? Can you give us any timeline of what's likely to happen? Nobody knows for certain, but certainly we've got through those 5th and 6th counts fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, you're going to see today that things happen quite fast, because the actual mechanics of the election operation itself, from an administration point of view, by Pádraig O'Grady, the returning officer, and his staff, there's a very, very clear path for them to follow now. So you will find the eliminations coming fast and furious, and the situation is going to be changing fairly rapidly as well. in terms of the way the votes are going, and it's very interesting out there talking to the people at the moment. Eamon Scanlon is gaining on Tony McLaughlin there, so there's a bit of a pep coming back into the step of Fianna Fáil people, because as the old saying goes, when you're coming into the back stretch, you prefer to be speeding up than slowing down.
Okay. So, I mean, yesterday there was talk about 2 Leitrim TDs and Jerry Reynolds having the edge over Eamon Scanlon. You maybe think that might be changing this morning?
The probability is swinging back a little bit towards Eamon Scanlon, so it's getting very, very interesting out there.
Okay, from the Italian point of view, you've had time to reflect on yesterday's operation, which again was very, very smooth and great cooperation between all the parties, as there always is.
Well, it's very interesting. I was listening to the radio this morning, and there were certain calls when I was on the way in for national government, and rather than the adversarial positions that every party takes up in the Dáil, more a position of detente. And detente worked absolutely brilliantly here yesterday. All the tally people were all working together, and we had a 98.5% accuracy. When you think of that now, we brought in the tally results at 2:30. It took 5 hours later to get the 100% accurate result that the returning officer gave. So for the limited time window that our tally people were operating in, we have to be very, very, very happy with that. Okay. And as I said yesterday morning to the tally people before we began, the tally is a very, very important part of the whole electoral process, because it ensures for a free, open and transparent election, and we're very lucky in Ireland to have that approach to elections anyway, but it ensures that there will be no malfunction or wrongdoing.
Okay, give us an indication, roughly how many people will be involved in the tally process, roughly?
Well, each candidate yesterday was given 8 tickets, so if you multiply 8 by 18, 144 people, and then we had our own coordinators on that, so you were talking about 160 people being here yesterday, and that was all voluntary, by the way. I'd like your listeners to know nobody was getting paid, and I'd like to pay a very, very special tribute to my own technical staff down in the corner. They were absolutely fantastic, the people who were doing the checks on the numbers and everything like that, and then Edmund Gray and the technical computing people that were there, they were absolutely fantastic.
Okay, and I can tell you, as what happened with the local elections 2 years ago, the system that you've piloted, whereby you can access the tallies online, which is a fantastic system, and avoids everybody running back and forward with bits of paper and printouts and so forth. It's an incredible system, and it's one really, and I know you would hope it would be introduced everywhere, because it makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and the great thing about it is it brings democracy closer to the people, and anything that brings democracy closer to the people is to be welcomed. And I know late on yesterday evening, we were running at over 500,000 hits on the site, and that'll just tell you the national interest. And I know that some of your own technical people were telling me that you had visitors from 26 countries.
51 actually.
You're joking.
Yeah, 51. And we have to blame you again, because we were told that it was physically impossible to crash our system yesterday. Yet when the tally started rolling in, that's exactly what happened. Well, so we have to blame you again, Pádraig, for that.
Well, it's a blame that we'll welcomely take.
Okay. Pádraig, thanks again, and we'll talk to Pádraig Carty later on. I want to ask Paschal about something else in a moment. There was something, John, you wanted to make a point.
Well, I'm not sure if I wanted to make a point, but I think...
No, that's what it was. I remember now. Yeah, you said to me earlier about Chris McManus, Martin Keaney, and you're swinging again.
Well, the listener asked, if you remember the
Chris
question,
asked
if I still believe that Chris McManus could be elected. I certainly do. I stand firmly behind that at the moment, that Chris McManus can certainly be elected. Going back to what somebody mentioned there about, Pádraig mentioned about Tony McLaughlin, and that Eamon Scanlon was catching him there on that. Remember that Susan O'Keefe has to be eliminated yet, and Marie Casserly, and Tony McLaughlin will be much more transfer friendly from those than Eamon Scanlon. However much so Eamon Scanlon's transfer popularity increases in the meantime. So I think that's...
Okay.
It's theoretically possible, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, I'm asked to remind people again, you can question, send your questions or comments. If you want to ask a question of the panel, if you want to know what's going on, want to find out what's likely to happen today, please text us now on 083 3500 530, 083 3500 530, or you can tweet your comments or your questions to @OceanFM Ireland and use the hashtag Sligo Leitrim as well. Remember to use that because it was trending in Ireland yesterday. Hashtag Sligo Leitrim. Tweet your comments, questions, etc. to @OceanFM Ireland. Does the panel think, John, I know we've talked about this before yesterday, does the panel believe John Perry's transfers will go back to Scanlon or back to the Fine Gael party? We've had a number of discussions on this. Noel, I think John gave us some figures yesterday. I don't know how accurate they were.
Yeah, well, look at, he is a Fine Gael candidate, and the majority of them will go back to the Fine Gael party. But having said that, I think Eamon Scanlon is going to do very well from them, his elimination, because of the fact that, they're both Ballymote town-based candidates. Now, somebody made the point yesterday, which is valid, that John Perry's vote came, from all over County Sligo, and I suppose when you take that into consideration, Eamon probably mightn't benefit as much from it as I initially thought. For example, somebody that voted in Sligo town or in North Sligo area that voted one Perry, probably wouldn't be given their number 2 to Eamon Scanlon, whereas somebody in South Sligo that voted one Perry would very likely give their number, particularly around the Ballymote area, would very likely give their number 2 to Perry if they weren't giving it to transferring it on to Fine Gael.
Paschal, I know we've talked about this before.
Yeah, I got on Michael Clark's comments yesterday just to remind ourselves.
It was a very interesting contribution.
Yeah, traditionally 40% of transfers in South Sligo stay in South Sligo. So I know that Eamon himself was talking about 20%, and when we worked that out on the basis of what John Perry's vote at that time was, which hasn't really significantly changed. I mean, it's gone from 4,413 to 4,5. It's only gone up about maybe 100 plus. So when I put it to Eamon that effectively meant only 800, that he would only get 800, and we're looking at 4,500, and that he would only get 800. I think that would not be. I don't think that would be a good platform for him to go forward in the hope of picking up that last seat if he's only going to pick up 800. And you have to bow to his local knowledge and all that. And what Noel has said has got to be taken into account. But based on what Michael Clark said and what traditionally has been the case, I think that John is going to transfer more votes than 800 out of his 4,500 to I mean, what is the point up to now where we have been looking at a geographical spread? We have all agreed that the geography has played a major role in the transfers, so why should it be any different for the dynamic between John Perry and Eamon Scanlon? That's just putting it out there.
No, you obviously I perspective on this.
Yeah, no, I agree with Paschal completely on that. If I was to put a figure on it at this stage, and we're a bit away from John being eliminated, but I would suggest that he'll get 1,500-1,600 votes, sometimes between 1,500 and 2,000 votes from. But I would say if I had to be tied down, I would imagine 1,500 or 1,600 votes. So it's twice the figure that Eamon was talking about yesterday. I'd be surprised if it's not in that region when we get to his elimination.
But could I just add again sort of a health warning on this? Let's just, for argument's sake, assume that Eamon Scanlon is going to get that around 1,500. As things stand, and we're awaiting other transfers out of Sligo, that would put him at around 7,500. And let's be generous with the other transfers and say he's up to around 8,000. But that only puts him something like 1,000 votes ahead of Jerry Reynolds, roughly. And then Paddy O'Rourke's elimination, which is going to be probably over 6,000, Fine Gael would be reasonable to expect that Jerry is going to get more than 1,000 votes from Paddy O'Rourke. So that's where the uncertainty surrounding the final seat, the destination of the final seat, rests.
Paschal, I'd add to that in that Jerry Reynolds is on 7,000 at the moment. I think he'll also get probably 1,500 votes, or at least 1,000 votes, between 1,000 and 1,500 from John Perry. So
you think so?
I think he'll get 1,000 votes from John Perry.
Okay.
So that will bring him up to 8.
Yeah. Okay. So it is not looking, as the figures unfold here, it's not looking too comfortable for Eamon Scanlon.
Okay, Danny tweets to say, well, he makes a point, and I'm sure you'll all agree with it. What we're seeing now shows the importance of filling out your full ballot sheet. You're all on it. Michael, you'd agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
And again, democracy in action, I think, is...
Democracy in action.
As Porrick Hart said earlier.
And there are many countries in the world where you get one choice only. And if your selected candidate is not elected, that's it. That's the end of your participation, if you like, in the democratic process. And I think it's excellent in Ireland where people can go down the full list. And remember, it can be used in many ways. It can be used to get your second or third choice candidate. It can also be used by some people in order to block candidates that you don't want to see coming into it. And tactical voting, it's called.
Yeah, but sure, that would never happen, Michael.
Oh, never, no.
Unheard of.
Niall, could I go back maybe to the discussion that we had around Mark McSharry's impressive 325 transfers from
Bernie O'Hara.
There was one of the questions that came in, Francie was showing me there off air, which mightn't have hit your script yet. But one of the questions related to the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
And the question, I think, was that, or the statement, was that pro-life voters had been circulated with a list of candidates who had supported pro-life. Now, I have to say that I saw a list, and the list was somewhat skewed in favour of Oireachtas members. The list was actually of TDs and senators nationally who had supported or opposed the Protection of Life Pregnancy Act of 2013.
And obviously Mark McSharry and Eamon Scanlon were on that list.
No. The only Oireachtas member from this area that would have been on that list
Eamon Scanlon is not a Oireachtas member,
Mark McSharry. No, what I'm suggesting to you is that list, it was an imperfect list, because it suggested that those who weren't on the list of candidates were not in favour, were not pro-life.
Yeah, okay. I think the same situation happened in Donegal, and there was a little bit of controversy about that.
Well, I felt that it was very unfair of the pro-life movement to put out a candidate. Like, I had an instance where Paddy O'Rourke was being accused on the doorstep in his absence by a voter, a pro-life voter, that he had not supported pro-life, and I said, what evidence? Oh, well, I have the list, and the list is updated, and I got it today, and he's not on it. So I said, do you have the list? And they said, yes, I do. Could I have a look at it? And when I looked at it, it was the list of Oireachtas members who had supported or opposed the Protection of Pregnancy Act.
Are you going to make a comment on this, is it? Or
on that. Many of you might have read the Sligo Champion this week. The pro-life. Well, first of all, I think Bernie O'Hara had 2 or 3 pages of advertising her election in the Sligo Champion, but one of them was in by a pro-life organisation, and it's specifically stated to give your number 1 vote to Bernie O'Hara, and to give your number 2 vote, and it gave a list of candidates. Now, Mark McSharry was at the top of that list. Now, I don't know why he was at the top of the list, because it wasn't in alphabetical order. It didn't specifically state to give your number 2 vote to Mark McSharry, but it implied that by putting him at the top, and give a list of another 6 or 7 candidates. Not sure exactly who the other ones was, but I know there was no Fine Gael candidate listed on the Sligo Champion on that page.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing illegal about it.
Not saying there is, but I think it was an unusual step for a pro-life movement to specifically state that number 2 votes should go to certain parties. And as I said, it was unusual that none of the Fine Gael candidates was listed on the page that they took out in the Sligo Champion. And it was also unusual that Mark McSharry was on the top of the list to give the number 2 to, which would imply that as I said, it wasn't in alphabetical order.
Yeah, I'm told by people who are texting me saying that the ads in the paper didn't do as Noel suggests. The ad said number 1 O'Hara and then McSharry, Filan, Casserly, Scanlon and O'Rourke in order of your choice.
Yeah,
but you're right, there are no Fine Gael candidates on the list.
There's no Fine Gael, but I think, if my memory serves me right, it says to continue your preferences or give your number 2 vote for the list, and Mark McSharry was on top of the list. Now, Mark McSharry got the highest preference from Bernie O'Hara, so it might have something to do with that ad.
I'm going back to I take the point that's been made, and I'd heard about the ad all right, but I thought it was unfair. I'm only talking about the experience that I had, and if that list of Oireachtas members who voted or opposed the Protection of Pregnancy Act was circulated to all pro-life supporters in this constituency, well then it was unfair to Paddy O'Rourke for a start. Because his name, the way it was put to me, he's not on the list.
No, his name was on the list.
But I'm talking about the list that I was showing that was circulated by the pro-life movement, but it was specific to the Oireachtas, and therefore I'm suggesting, along with what Noel has said, is that Mark McSharry, a possible explanation for the high transfer he got,
because his name was first.
But he was the only Oireachtas member
and his name
in the
was
constituency.
Michael, you want to say that? And I think
I'm not sure.
I think I could be wrong here, and I don't like to be giving inaccurate information, but I think Martin Keaney, maybe not Martin Keaney, Chris McManus was in favour of repealing the 8th.
Sinn Féin are in favour.
In general, presumably Martin Keaney is of that opinion as well. I just can't remember what way he indicated anyway, continue on.
But I'm not sure the significance of this discussion, because it's not going to be a factor in the remaining transfers. And we have so much left to play for with the numbers that are in there.
In the context of why it stands out, Michael, I'm sure you must agree that the McSharry transfer stands out in that particular
right. It may well
by way of just analysing it.
It may well be, but you're right. I don't think it's going to be.
John is looking for the ad in the champion. We'll get the ad in a moment. But anyway, Michael, the point you were making was
I don't think it's going to be a factor at all in the remaining transfers. And when you look at the numbers that have yet to be distributed, it's not going to be a significant factor.
No, and in fact, I made the point, I think, yesterday, that one of the surprising aspects of this, Michael, campaign is that that the pro-life vote was more of a closet vote. I certainly didn't pick it up as much as I thought I would. I thought that it might have come out on the door. By the way, I have to say, equally, I didn't pick up anybody saying to me, repeal the 8th Amendment. I picked up more about fracking in Leitrim than I did about that.
Absolutely.
All right. Just to let people know, we're waiting on the result of the 7th count, which is the distribution of Nigel Gallagher's votes, the People Before Profit AAA candidate whom we talked to yesterday, first-time candidate, youngest candidate in the field, who was eliminated on the 6th count. And we're expecting Mark McSharry to be elected sometime perhaps in the afternoon, maybe not.
Yeah, could I maybe just revert again to our brief discussion about surpluses, and I bow to the greater wisdom of Noel and John. So I'm like a dog with a bone on this, so I went off and I checked it out with some of the officials.
And I thought you were going to the toilet, Paschal.
No, well, I went off to check it with some of the officials. I wasn't in any way doubting what they said, and I was behind the ball in that regard.
Okay, as I was, because I actually believed
but here's the thing,
to be the case that you had stated.
John and Noel were right that it would be whoever provided the surplus, as they said, and in this instance, just to put names on it, that say for argument's sake, there's Paddy O'Rourke, elimination, that provided the surplus of the 200, mythical 200, to Mark McSharry. What they do is that they pick the bundle of 1,000 votes from the Paddy O'Rourke votes, and they then go about calculating the surplus. If there's 200, they will take 200 out of that 1,000, which is purely random. It's still random. That's the point that I think both you and I now were making. That there was a random element to the surplus.
And strictly, it's still not.
It's just a
theoretically
100%
accurate.
But John and Noel, in fairness, were correct in how they arrive at that. Whereas I had assumed that they picked it off the 12,800. They just went along all the bundles. The bundles, by the way, are in thousands. Not right, John. The bundles are in thousands. So I assumed that they just went, like you, that they just went along the bundles and just picked one at random, so it could come from anywhere. But the point is still this irrelevant in that it will be Paddy O'Rourke's bundle of 1,000, but they will come from anywhere. Yeah. They could come from anywhere.
Yeah,
okay.
Is that right, Mike?
Francie, if there's any more questions, you might let us know. Well, I think we've answered this already. Somebody wants to know the likelihood of 2 Fianna Fáil being returned based on the Ballymote transfers, or will Leitrim prevail? I think we've discussed that. We may discuss it again later on. Did you find that ad yet, John? No.
The ad in the Sligo Champion, in fairness to what was printed, does not state in this week's Champion.
Okay.
There are 2 pages for Bernie O'Hara in the Champion, but there is no mention.
It could be in last week's edition, perhaps. Maybe so. I don't know.
Having said that, all parties exhort other parties to continue their preferences as far as they see fit.
Okay. Paschal, could I ask you to address this?
Sorry. We've come across it. It's not a Bernie O'Hara ad. It's a pro-life ad.
Okay.
And that's something that needs to be clarified. It wasn't a Bernie O'Hara ad.
We better correct that.
It's a pro-life ad.
Okay. We just want to, Noel, do you want to read it out what it says exactly?
No, well, and
as Paschal said, this doesn't really have an overall bearing on things.
It hasn't an overall bearing at all, but just when we're having the discussion, when I brought up this point, I did say it was a pro-life ad that was put in by one of the pro-life companies, and what it says is vote number 1 for O'Hara Bernie Independent, vote 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 for Mark McSherry, Finbar Finan, Eamon Scanlon, Des Cooking and Paddy O'Rourke. So what is it, and it's putting them in order there, and as I said, not in alphabetical order. It's suggesting that you will give your number 2 vote to Mark McSherry, and that's why I feel that Mark McSherry got the highest preference.
Yeah.
Now the 3 Fianna Fáil candidates are mentioned in the ad.
Together with highlighted.
Okay. Highlighted, yeah, and together with Finbar Fine and Des Cooking. So look, it's only a side point, but it was unusual that.
But we talk about Sinn Féin and the experts they are at vote management.
Well, it's just, I think it goes a long way to explaining how Mark got 325.
Which is probably the main.
Which is really all this discussion is about. And Michael was right; it's having no overall bearing, other than that. And I said it yesterday, and I said it again, that I'm surprised to some extent that the pro-life issue didn't come up on the
didn't figure it, and that came across to you. And Michael, you're not in agreement. It wasn't really a major factor.
Yeah, and I don't know what our listeners or viewers have, what opinion they might have on that, because I was genuinely surprised that it didn't come up.
I would suggest that most people understand that parties who want to see the referendum are not pro-abortion parties, because they think there was an attempt to mislead the public into thinking that if you were in support of the referendum, that you were in support of abortion, and that is certainly not the case with Sinn Féin, and certainly not with me or the candidates who are standing for Sinn Féin.
Okay, we're waiting the 7th count. I'm conscious that we have an 11 o'clock break to take. We'll go to that in a couple of minutes. Paschal, I was listening to the national radio this morning, national commentator on, and he said the only combination for formation of government can be Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. There is no other combination.
Well, if you were listening to the national coverage, you would have also heard a number of newly elected or re-elected Fianna Fáil TDs ruling that out. Definitively ruling it out.
I mean, are they entitled to rule it out?
Well, they ruled it out on the basis that there was only 95 seats filled. We have to wait until the dust settles, until we see just what the composition.
But you know that is going to be the case. We know that's going to be.
Well, you have to wait and see what the combination is going to be. I mean, they were even talking to Maureen O'Sullivan in Dublin, an independent, and she was saying about her willingness to engage in discussions. So they seem to be focusing on the 157 TDs that are going to be returned to Dáil Éireann in terms of the formation of government.
All right. So you don't think it's a fait accompli?
But it's been ruled out.
And you're still of the opinion, as you said yesterday, Fianna Fáil should not go into coalition with Fine Gael.
Derek O'Leary has confirmed that last night.
Well, it doesn't matter what Derek O'Leary says.
Thomas Byrne this morning similarly, and it's a case of they want to wait until the dust settles.
All right, okay. Maybe we'll have the discussion. But what about what the public want, what the public have voted for, Paschal? Is it not in the national interest that you would consider going into coalition with Fine Gael?
The public have voted for 150 odd TDs. I mean, that's what they voted for. And they're the people that would have to decide the formation of government.
Michael?
I would have said that I think there'd be a responsibility, for example, on Sinn Féin to go and see is there a way that we could provide stable government that will make an utter change from what has gone before. I think Sinn Féin will discharge that responsibility, and I think it would be wrong of us not to do so. I don't think the public would thank either Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael if they were to ignore the choices that have been made in this democracy and were to say we will not put civil war politics behind, we will not attempt to sit down and agree a programme of government. As I said yesterday, there's so little difference in the policies between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael.
Sorry, I have to nail that one. There is a major difference.
There's a difference in emphasis.
No, there's a difference in our policy. With all due respect,
I have no doubt that if it weren't for the brand, that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael could sit down and agree a programme of government and try to deliver on what, if that is what the public want. And I think there'll be a price to pay if that desire of the public is ignored.
You see, it suits Sinn Féin and others to be able to say, there's no difference between them. And this idea of civil war politics. I mean, with all due respects, has anybody been listening to the platform that Micheál Martin put out at the beginning of this election? The slogan within Fianna Fáil was for a fairer, more equitable society. He has moved the party to a left of centre position, which, by the way, fits in very comfortably with my own ideology. There was always a left of centre dimension to Fianna Fáil, but Micheál Martin, in my opinion, has crystallised that, and I believe that the people responded accordingly. I'm not going to refight the election, but we're going to end up with somewhere between 40 and 45 seats.
Okay.
If the people were not responding to that equality and fairness, which was a central platform of the Fianna Fáil policy during this campaign, I don't think we would have got the results that we got.
But the majority...
And therefore, there is a significant difference. People voted because they acknowledged that we said there was a difference.
The majority of people have voted for right-wing parties. Is there not a responsibility on those right-wing parties?
We don't see ourselves as a right-wing party. We're not a right-wing party. We're a left-of-centre party, and that's where we have positioned ourselves now on the basis of fairness and equity and the improvement in public services. In fact, we probably don't go. We don't differ to a large extent from those that are on the left. So all I'm saying.
You remind me now of Bertie Ahern saying that he was a socialist.
No, forget about that, Niall, with respect. We're talking about this campaign and about where Micheál Martin has positioned the Fianna Fáil party over the last number of years, crystallised during the last 3 weeks of the general election campaign. And I am suggesting to you that the people responded to that particular call by Micheál Martin for a fairer, more equitable society, which is a distinct difference between ourselves and Fine Gael.
As recently as within the last 6 weeks, Micheál Martin stood up in Dáil and pointed out the reality that Fine Gael followed the programme that had been laid down by Fianna Fáil before Fianna Fáil left office. Now, you can't on the one hand say that Fine Gael were following Fianna Fáil's programme and now turn around and say that you're totally different. So,
that's not relevant. I mean, the government, the Troika, have been gone out of the country for the last 2 years. The decisions that were taken by this government were not based on Fianna Fáil policy, Michael, with all due respects, and again I'm suggesting that the people saw that. So for you to try and to reinvent the wheel on that basis, I think is totally, it's not in keeping with what the general sentiment of the people who went out and voted for Fianna Fáil.
And adjudicate between the warring parties.
No, I feel, look, we're after having a 3-week campaign, and there was a lot of debates, national debates and local debates and so on. The debating is over, the votes are being counted, and if one is to go by what we heard coming in the car this morning, Fine Gael is going to be the biggest party. There's only 3 possibilities that can happen that I see it from listening. Is that we have a Fine Gael Fianna Fáil coalition is option 1. Option 2 is that there's a Fine Gael-led minority government. Or option 3 is that we go back to the people again. There is no 4th option. And I don't think there's an appetite for option 3, that we go back to the people again in a month's time. most people, I think, would see very little relevance in it. So we're down to two options then. We're either down to a Fine Gael-led minority government or a Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil government. I mean, that's all that's on the table at the minute.
Okay, I tell you, we're going to take a break for our 11 o'clock news. We'll have lots of discussion in relation to that no doubt throughout the day. We're told that the 7th count is about 8 minutes away. Back in a few moments. most important question I suppose we've had this morning so far is somebody came up wondering what time is Mass and where's the nearest Mass and will it be a quick one? So there you go. John Gurry has been on to us from Arkansas in the United States telling us that he's working on the Donald Trump campaign. John, of course, is well known. I think he's from Riverstown in Sligo originally. John's been in the USA for many, many years, then was back home, deeply involved with Sligo GEA in Chicago for many years. And John has tweeted or emailed us to tell us that he is in Arkansas working on the Donald Trump campaign, which is an interesting thing, and just wants to wish you all well.
Can I be personal? And looking at the camera, as Ciaran has said to me, my daughter Marie is, as we speak, watching us in Perth, down under, and is keeping up to speed and all that's going on. And I think that might be symptomatic of people across the world who are watching online to the Ocean FM coverage. So hi Marie, I said I'd give you a wave. That's been very twee, but good to hear from you, and we hope that everything is going well. So, and I'm sure the same could be true of many other families who have sons and daughters that are abroad, and it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of technology that you can kind of join up so many miles away. Who would have thought it?
Incredible.
Who would have thought it? So,
right, so while you're
lots of love and hugs, Marie.
While you're eating your croissants here in the Clarion Hotel, Marie is probably out on a beach in Perth, Australia. Still summertime, I think. Over
yes,
there,
it is. Yeah. Chances are. But then again, she works hard, so she might be just taking a few hours chilling out.
Yeah.
So it's very hot down there. It's very hot down there.
Quite incredible, as you say. It is. I mean, you think of the technology involved that you can face a camera here.
Well, I can remember when I was 18 or 19 years of age when I emigrated to London, and I had to first of all dial up an operator who then put me through to what was called the Irish service, and the Irish service would then have to put you through to the Dublin exchange. The Dublin exchange would then put you through to the local exchange, and then you would finally get to talk to the folks at home. That was, in my lifetime.
Did you ever press button B, Paschal?
Yes, I did. Yeah, when it didn't work, to get the money back. I did actually.
Okay. John, you wanted to say something?
Yes, and
is it about Donald Trump and John Gurry?
No, we're not going quite that far, or we're not going to Perth, and we send good wishes to Paschal's daughter in Perth. But I also have an interesting one here. I'm just after opening up my Facebook page from just outside Birmingham in England, where I see Jim MacDonald has shared the Ocean FM website in Dudley, West Midlands, and incidentally, I presume he has shared it because that's an area where Jerry Rindle's uncle Kevin, R.I.P., ran the Emerald Club in Birmingham there. Maybe Paschal had been in that club or anything?
Not the Emerald. I was in the Irish Centre in Digbet. That's what I remember about my time in Birmingham.
But that's interesting that they're keeping up to speed with it there, and they'd be second, third generation Irish there.
How do you know these things, John?
Well, we go to school. That's why we learned when we were going to school.
It just never ceased to amaze me the amount of information that you retain all the time in relation to families and connections and so forth. Noel?
Yeah, no, just while we're on greetings.
Well, sure. You can face the camera, Noel.
Yeah,
and
my daughter, I don't know if she's tuned in now. She was tuned in yesterday. She's in Aberdeen. She's actually sick this weekend. She was in bed, so hopefully she's up at this stage. She is actually in Aberdeen. So, but just to follow on from what Paschal was saying there about dialing from England, I worked for a while out in Kilmactranny in what was NCF in Kilmactranny at the time, and if somebody was to ring from Dublin that time to us in the NCF branch, they had to go to Carrick-on-Shannon and be put through. You were talking about button B. This is before button B even came in, Niall, before you had a telephone in your hand. They had to be put through to Ballyfernan Exchange, and from Ballyfernan through to the store in Kilmactranny. And if we were on the phone, the person said there that it was engaged. So that's the way telecommunications has gone since then.
Okay, well, from those days in Kilmactranny to modern technology and the seventh count, which is just about coming our way now in a moment. And remember, this is a distribution of Nigel Gallagher's votes. People before profit at AAA. No, almost here. Okay, what else? Yeah, what other people were texting in to remind us, and just to make the point that the pro-life ad that we were talking about earlier was in the Sligo Weekender as well as the Sligo Champion, and we've got a lot of communication in relation to that. And I know, Francie, that still people are looking for tallies, and maybe that's something we will come back to later in the day. I do promise we will come back. People are still interested in tallies and results from boxes, and we'll do a little bit.
That's right. Maybe as we said,
analysis later on.
Exactly, and we'll go
just when we get a couple
through
of
some of the boxes as well, and we'll get to some of your questions, and you can keep them coming in 083 3500 530 online at Ocean FM Ireland.
Okay.
Use the hashtag.
All right.
Leitrim.
Heidi Solberg Viar, I hope I pronounced that correct. Heidi Solberg Viar is listening to us at work from Milwaukee. She says it's fascinating and complicated. And well, isn't that the truth? It is fascinating and complicated, the whole count process. Michael?
Just while we're on greetings, is it okay?
Oh no, work away.
Just while we're on greetings, is it okay?
Just face the camera there.
My former PA left me and emigrated to Australia, Marcella Fallon. So, Marcella, thinking of you here, I know that she was watching yesterday for most of the day, and she's probably watching now. Miss you, I know that you'd love to be here. But she's coming home again in summer. We'll see her then. So, best wishes from all here.
Right. So,
and a big thank you to the people that you've helped while you were my PA.
Okay. What part of Australia is she in, Michael? Did you say?
I think it's Perth.
Perth. Yeah. Along with Paschal's daughter.
Right.
And Noel has a daughter in Aberdeen. And John, did you say you have a nephew tuned in as well? Did you say yesterday you had a nephew?
Yes, in New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yes. Jason is there doing the farming there. It's the summertime of the year. They're saving the hay.
Right.
Okay. Right, what else is coming away? The boxes, we'll get to the boxes later on, Francie. Just waiting for that 7 count, so this, we're just waiting for Pádraig O'Grady to come to the podium.
Something happening now.
Right, here we go now.
Yeah, 7.
The following is the result of the 7th count, which consisted of the distribution of Nigel Gallagher's votes of 2,074. Bree Declan plus 618, giving him a total of 4,165, 4165. Casserly Marie, non-party, plus 443, giving her a total of 3,697, 3697. Kenny Martin, Sinn Féin, plus 207, giving him a total of 6,988, 6988. McManus Chris, Sinn Féin, plus 285, giving him a total of 5,194, 5194. McSharry Mark, Fianna Fáil, plus 102, giving him a total of 9,549, 9549. McLaughlin Tony, Fine Gael, plus 45, giving him a total of 6,485, 6485. O'Keefe Susan, the Labour Party, plus 96, giving her a total of 2,192, 2192. O'Rourke Paddy, Fianna Fáil, plus 20, giving him a total of 5,819, 5819. Perry John, Fine Gael, plus 33, giving him a total of 4,566, 4566. Reynolds George, Fine Gael, plus 27, giving him a total of 7,054, 7054. Scanlon Eamon, Fianna Fáil, plus 53, giving him a total of 6,179, 6179. Non-transferable papers not effective, 145. As no candidate has reached the quota on this count, as there is no surplus for distribution, I will now exclude the lowest candidate and distribute her votes. That is Susan O'Keefe's 2,192 votes, and the next count will consist of that. Thank you.
Okay, now we're motoring somewhat. We've had 3 counts already in the first 2 hours and 20 minutes this morning. I think it was, I'll come to you first, John, because I think it was you that pointed out that maybe the distribution of Gallagher's wouldn't go as strongly to Chris McManus as some would have expected, and that certainly seems to be the case.
Yes, at this moment in time, because he would be more aligned, and Declan Bree was the major beneficiary. But I think eventually we'll see them coming back to Chris McManus eventually through Bree. It's going to take a little bit longer, but they certainly will come back.
Okay. Anything else striking about that
I'm
distribution?
I'm just looking at it here. They have gone broadly as we were expecting on it there, and Scanlon is now just 300 votes behind McLaughlin. Keaney is maintaining the gap. Keaney and Reynolds and McSharry are ahead there. But again, I see on this count, I see McLaughlin should surge ahead. Interestingly, going back to what I was saying earlier, is that the gap is widening a little bit again between O'Rourke and Scanlon. What I'm looking at here, I don't expect. Some people have been suggesting to me that Bree could catch Perry, but I don't think that's going to happen. Certainly not on this count, given that it's a Labour vote. Bree being a former Labour candidate, there's that antagonism between them there. So I wouldn't expect that there'll be a great vote to Bree, transferred to Bree at this stage.
Okay, Michael Colreavy, on the distribution there, could you have expected more for Chris McManus? As John says, they'll probably still eventually come to him. But
Declan Bree did get a good vote, which is not surprising, I think, from Nigel. And in fairness, the two Sinn Féin candidates did get a decent follow through. Obviously, we would have liked more. But what it does show again is that it's a mix. It's not just a purely ideological vote that Nigel picked up. I think many of the votes will come back to Sinn Féin, and I'd say the preponderance of those will be for Chris McManus.
Okay, Paschal.
Yeah, if you remember early on this morning, I said that Sinn Féin sources had indicated to me that Nigel Gallagher was not going to transfer significantly to Chris McManus. But at the same time, as Michael says, the Sinn Féin share of the transfers is pretty significant. Chris McManus got 285 and Martin Kenny got 207. What's interesting though about that transfer is that I thought that it might have been confined exclusively to sort of the Harkin at the left, but it's been spread right across, admittedly to a greater or lesser extent. That's, for example, Eamon Scanlon picked up 53 I mean, of them.
Perry got 33.
Yeah, which is rather interesting. And also, I would have thought that perhaps Susan O'Keefe might have picked up more, but she didn't. She got just 96.
Yeah.
So the question now arises about Susan O'Keefe's transfers, and if my memory serves me right, the last election, towards the end, there was Michael was right in the centre of this. There was a hope within Fianna Fáil that Susan O'Keefe, who had around 6,500 votes to transfer at that stage, that she would transfer a significant portion of them, or some, at least, let's say, more than she did, to Eamon Scanlon. But it goes back to the lack of transfer-friendly environment that Fianna Fáil were operating in at that stage. So I'm just wondering, would that be changed this time? And could Eamon Scanlon reasonably expect to pick up, let's say, a significant share? Significant to him rather than the overall figure is. I don't know whether anybody has a view on that.
Yeah, we'll come back. I just want to get a perspective from Noel, and then I also want to talk about Susan O'Keefe, because she, as you say, she's a high profile politician involved.
Of Gallagher's vote, yeah. I suppose I would have thought as well that more of it might have gone to Chris McManus, but I think it will go to him via Declan Bree when it gets round, when Declan Bree will be eliminated. So I think that vote, it's a left vote. It's an anti-water, anti-austerity vote, anti-water charges vote. Sorry, not anti-water, it's
anti-water charge.
Anti-water charges opposed to accepting the water with no charge. But it's an anti-water charge vote, and I suppose Declan Bree, it was one of his main part of his campaign, and also I think it will come to Chris McManus because Chris was leading that campaign in Sligo. So I think we just have to wait for a little while, and most of it will return to Chris McManus.
Okay, John.
Can I come to you quickly there, Niall, just on one thing? And this is where we're missing Marian Harkin, our mathematician this morning, who would have been doing the mental arithmetic, but I've taken over that a little bit now. And I've looked at it here just quickly, and of the 304 votes that Nigel Gallagher got in Leitrim, he actually transferred 314 back to the Leitrim candidates. Now, granted, there were votes that he picked up from Leitrim candidates on the way, but it shows that the geographical transfer is very, very much in evidence here on that transfer.
Okay, Paschal, Noel, you wanted to make a point, and I want
to say to John there, with his blonde hair, I suppose he's the nearest on the panel that looks like Marian Harkin, maybe, so that's maybe why he's doing the mathematical sums.
Okay. Marian unfortunately couldn't be with us today, much as she wanted to be with us. She's jetting back to Brussels for another week's work. As I said, life gets back to normal fairly quickly.
Both Marian and myself are quite able to brush it aside, Jet.
Paschal, you were asking, were you not, about Susan O'Keefe's transfers from 5 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it here. She was eliminated in the 7th count, and the 8th count. The transfer of her votes were as follows. Your gentleman beside you, Michael Colreavy, got 1,477. Tony McLaughlin got 1,488. John Perry got 1,554, and Eamon Scanlon got 553.
Right. So then one can assume that he's going to get a transfer from her. He's going to get, as Noel has been saying, and we'll await the outcome of this. The pact or the agreement between Fine Gael and Labour, maybe that is held up, maybe not, but it's certainly held up there. But that would have been as much an anti-Fianna Fáil vote as anything else.
Yeah.
Could I, by the way, say, which I should have said earlier on, it sounded like we're somewhat dismissive, being analytical on the announcement of an elimination, that there's a human dimension to this,
yep.
and I feel
and I do like to bring that
sorry
into
for Susan O'Keefe, who I have served in the Senate with over the last 5 years. She has been a very diligent and very committed member of the Oireachtas. She spent a lot of her time over the last 12-18 months as a member of the banking inquiry, and she brought her own unique journalistic talents and forensic talents to that particular debate. So in a way it diminishes I think politics that people of Susan's calibre would be lost to the National Parliament, because apart altogether from bowing out of the race here, because of the perilous state of the Labour Party in terms of Senate votes, Susan, if she is intending to try and keep her seat in the Senate, is going to find it very difficult, first of all, to get a nomination because of the number of seats that they have. In fact, as things stand, I think there's 4 Labour TDs elected, which will only allow them to nominate one candidate for the Senate elections,
so
and they're going out with 9 or 10, and they're only going to be allowed to nominate one on what's called the Oireachtas panel. It's four Oireachtas members per candidate to fight to contest the election. The other way, of course, of being nominated to contest the Senate election is to get what's called a nominating body to nominate you, that's registered with the Oireachtas across the 5 vocational panels. So it's going to be very difficult.
There will be a host of
some of the heavy hitters.
XTDs.
Will obviously be in a renewal situation, but I'm just adding that in.
It's important, and we're conscious that every time somebody's eliminated, it is important.
Sorry, what I said, I've actually got it wrong there now. It's 4 TDs, but they also, I think they have 8 senators, so they would have 3. They'll be able, as things stand, to nominate 3 candidates to the Labour.
All right. You mentioned something, and I want to come back to you in relation to that. And we mentioned it in relation to the banking inquiry. I'll come back to that in a moment. Michael, just Susan O'Keefe.
I would like to also, the job we're doing here is to kind of analytically go down through the figures on that, and just in case we might come across as being dispassionate or not having concern in relation to candidates who are eliminated. There's a very human story there, and I think any of us who ever went for election experienced the disappointment of not being elected, and the disappointment of our families, and the disappointment of our supporters. And I think more so when somebody has held a position. It's very, very difficult, you know. And I feel, for instance, for John Perry now, later today, it looks clear that he's going to be eliminated. And I spoke to his son last night, and you could see and feel the hurt. The family hurt that's going on there, and I think we need to be conscious of that all the time.
Yeah, I think that's everybody would agree with that. Noel?
I concur with everything that's said. I mean, Susan O'Keefe is obviously at the end of the line today as far as Dáil is concerned on this occasion, but I suppose we can't, you know, she possibly will be running for the Senate, and you know, I mean, we can't kind of suggest at this stage maybe that she won't be elected to the Senate, but for her, and lots of senators as well, you know. I mean, the likes of Susan O'Keefe will be up against big names, you know, ex-ministers that run for the Senate, and you know,
2002 in we're conscious to be conscious of what we were saying, and we didn't like to be overly cruel, and sometimes we said things that we didn't honestly believe was going to turn out purely in the interest of those that were listening to us. May I take this opportunity to wish everybody who is now preparing, Paschal will be one of those who is preparing to go for the arduous process that's coming in for the Senate now. My own brother as well, Michael, I'd like to wish him the best of luck as well in a very arduous election, much tougher than a Dáil election. And as Paschal quite rightly points out, it's difficult to get the nominations, let alone get elected. That's the way it is.
The point I was going to make to you, Paschal, and Noel referred to it earlier, all the members of the banking inquiry who've either lost their seats or who went for election and didn't get elected. Can we read anything into that? There was a suggestion on national radio this morning that maybe, you know, they were so bound up. There was a huge amount of workers, you know, involved.
And they were outside the public.
Have failed to be elected.
Well, I think TDs, particularly, there would have been more pressure on them, constituency-wise, not only on them themselves, but also within the parties. And certainly from a Fine Gael point of view, I'm sure that their allies, their colleagues in the constituency where they had more than one seat, were making sure that they were profiling while their colleague was sitting in the banking inquiry. I mean, there was a feeling, for example, that Ciaran Lynch, who was the chairman of the banking inquiry and the Labour TD for Cork South Central, that politically that it was a bit of madness for him to take on the role of chairman, particularly as the constituency that he was in was being reduced from 5 seats to 4, and it had some of the highest profile candidates in the country. That was Micheál Martin and Michael McGrath, Fianna Fáil, and Simon Coveney and Jerry Buttimer of Fine Gael. And it was seen politically within the House as that it wasn't a very wise move politically on his part. But then again, as Michael has been, you have to respect people who believe that they're acting in the national interest. And sometimes the people don't always appreciate that. They kind of say, oh, politics is all the same, or they're cynical, or they're out for themselves, or they're selfish. And yet, you're right in highlighting that here was an example of people who were acting in the national interest, who could have turned it down and said, no, I'm not going to get engaged or involved at all.
And paid the price.
And paid the price, absolutely,
any questions or comments, text them to 083 3500 530. You can tweet to @OceanFM Ireland. Use the hashtag Sligo Leitrim handle. You can watch live, obviously, oceanfm.ie if you want to watch proceedings live, or if indeed if you want to catch up on the tallies. You might have an interest, and I know people still do, the interest in how your particular area voted, the polling booth that you were voting in, how it turned out. All those statistics are on our website, oceanfm.ie. John?
Just one thing there. Francie mentioned to me there that some people were looking for, and if we have a moment now, Bunnanadden was one that came to mind there, that Francie was looking for the polling, how it done there. For Bunnanadden it was Bree 13, Casserly 10, Filan 4, Gallagher 5, Guckian 2, Keaney 2, McManus 22, McSharry 15, McLaughlin 21, Murray 0, O'Hara 3, O'Hora 1, O'Keefe 11, O'Rourke 2, Perry 41, Reynolds 3, and let's see how Reynolds 3, Scanlon 197, and Sweeney 0. So that's just from there. I think he may have also mentioned the Tubbercurry polling station, and I think I have the Tubbercurry booths here.
Okay.
Just as we get them here on screen in front of me, we have Tubbercurry had three booths, and I'll go through them quickly. They had 4 booths. Bree had 10, 7, 5 and 3. Casserly 15, 11, 12 and 18. Filan 8, 5, 12 and 1. Next we had Gallagher with 6, 3, 5 and 10. Guckian 0, 6, 1 and 1. Keaney 7, 7, 6 and 5. McManus 26, 51, 28 and 29. McSharry 61, 62, 60, 44, 78 and 58. McLaughlin 57, 23, 34 and 18. Murray 0, 0, 0, 0. Nothing for Murray and Tubbercurry. O'Hara 4, 5, 8 and 10. O'Keefe 7, 12, 13 and 8. O'Rourke 1, 2, 0 and 1. Perry 61, 49, 42 and 40. And we scroll on then for next up we have Reynolds 2, 5, 3 and 6. Scanlon 105, 95, 80 and 113. And Sweeney was 0, 2, 0, 0. So that's the Tubbercurry.
Okay, and I thought the bingo was last night, John. So there you go. Thanks for that. There's a lot of people interested in those boxes. Sorry, Paschal.
Sorry, I don't want to divert away from that local information, which of course you're right. People really enjoy those. And
they are on our website. If you do want to access them, they're on our website.
Great. I'm just jumping ahead here.
Yeah, jump ahead.
Declan Bree, now admittedly he's going to have double his vote from the last time when his votes are to be distributed. But and appreciate that it was within the context of the time of the 2011 election. But his transfers stayed on the left, and therefore it might again bring up the question of the amount of votes that Chris McManus is going to get from. Equally with Susan O'Keefe's transfers, Eamon Scanlon got 553 of her total, but then her total at the time was 6,500. So he ended up getting 500 of them. Of the transfers, Tony McLaughlin got a significant portion of them, which would seem to suggest what Noel has been saying, that if there was an indication of it, there wasn't a formal pact that time, but there has been
some sort of an accord.
There's been but there wasn't even
no, I know there wasn't
at the time, but there has been since. There has been since, so therefore that would suggest that Tony McLaughlin is going to benefit significantly from Susan's transfers. Michael, of course, got a very big share of them, which helped towards his election. But I'm just pointing out that Fianna Fáil did rather poorly in terms of the transfers from Susan O'Keefe and from Declan Bree. So again, it raises the question of the development of Eamon Scanlon's vote, which we've been talking about, which has been trending in my mind overnight and into the morning in terms of the chances of him securing that final seat.
And are you changing your mind in relation to that?
No, but I said all along that he would be in the fight for the last seat. But what I'm saying is that I'm very uncomfortable about the trend of the transfers.
Okay.
That maybe he could fall short. Even despite the unresolved question of the Perry transfer to Eamon, he could fall short.
Okay, just to tell people, we're waiting on the 8th count, the distribution of Susan O'Keefe's votes, 2,192 votes to be dealt with. Francie, a couple more questions from the public. 083 500 530 is our text number. You can tweet at Ocean FM Ireland, #Sligo Leitrim.
Yeah, just a couple of comments, I suppose, and you can deal with them afterwards. Why no mention of how well Castlereagh voted, just a few hundred behind Perry? Susan O'Keefe holds so badly in Sligo Leitrim because of her vote in the Shannon for the CF patients, which was brought up actually in our Sligo Leitrim debates. Why don't the public get a say in the Senate race or Senate seat? What is the election process to get elected as a senator? And somebody else said, well, at Mass, I was at Mass there and I was praying hopefully for the right result. In relation to other boxes, which we'll look at later, Ballinacaro boxes, Riverstown was also mentioned. Somebody also mentioned that Eamon Scanlon and Marie Castlereagh are related, so that might help Scanlon, says somebody else. Also, and a good few people texting in about the Champion or the Weekender, but those were that's where you'll find those ads. You mentioned, and somebody said, look down south and see the large vote the Healy-Rae brothers got. The locals support those who look after local issues, says Joe. Will Bree now finally stop putting himself forward? The people have decided they don't want him. Somebody else said Michael Comiskey is a public representative along with Susan O'Keefe and Imelda Henry. They chose to vote no on the Senate to a motion for the introduction for CF patients, so a few people have mentioned that. And here's one, having no TD or worse still ending up with a TD who did not support the fracking ban on Leitrim, which is worse, says a Manor Hamilton listener.
Okay, well, that's in relation to Jerry Reynolds, and I think he explained that quite clearly at our debate last week, the reason he voted the way he did at that meeting of Leitrim County Council last year.
Sorry, and somebody else was just wondering, there's a good few people wondering, what's their thoughts on McManus getting a seat? And a good few people want to know about that. If you have any, as Niall says, you can text 083 3500 530. You can tweet at Ocean FM Ireland using the hashtag Sligo Leitrim, or indeed on Facebook, Ocean FM Ireland. And by the way, you can watch us live and stream it live there. So maybe if you want to deal with some of those issues.
A couple of those issues. Paschal, which one did you want to deal with?
Well, there's a couple. We'll take the Senate one because I'm in situ.
Well, first of all, it's not. Well, it is true and it's not true that the public don't have a vote. Certain members of the public have a vote.
Yeah, those that would be graduates of the National University of Ireland.
Only certain graduates.
And the Trinity, absolutely right. And it's, the people decided on that one in a referendum way back in 1979. The outgoing government pledged that they would extend the franchise, but there was a fierce lobby from the existing NUI and from Trinity, who said that this would mean that the extension of the franchise could run into hundreds of thousands of voters, and that they wouldn't be able to energetically campaign. But there was a fierce lobby, and the government shied away from actually extending it, which I think was a pity, really, that they should have just had one constituency, which I think was proposed, rather than two. The reason why there's two constituencies was back to the formation of the state, particularly with Trinity, to give the Southern Unionists a voice. In fact, the Senate concept was to give the Southern Unionists a voice in the National Parliament. That's what the Senate originally, under the Free State government, was set up. In the context of
the rest is a nonsense, Paschal, isn't it? You can be nominated by this this body or their body or whatever.
Well, they have
it's
a list of
complete
what
and
are
utter
called,
nonsense.
they have a list of called registered bodies. There are 5 vocational panels. There's the Labour panel, there's the admin panel, the agriculture panel, industrial,
but just on that,
commercial,
if you've milked a cow once in your life, you qualify for the agriculture panel. I mean, that's how daft it is, isn't it?
And the 43 seats that are elected of the 60 come from the electoral roll that includes county councillors, TDs, the newly elected TDs, and the outgoing senators, which brings a total of about maybe 1,170 voters nationwide. And the other way of being nominated to contest, as I said earlier, is through your political party, which is on the Oireachtas panel. So that's how the process works.
Yeah, it's not. I'm coming into Michael in a moment. It's not a process everybody agrees with, but funnily enough, the public voted to retain the Senate.
Not only that, but I mean, like across the water, the British House of Lords, which is an effective and very central part of the British democratic structures, nobody is elected.
Yeah.
So
retirement home for those who served their time.
Yeah, but I mean, it does fulfil a very valuable role. And
would you like a House of Lords?
Oh, absolutely, I would. And in Canada, when you're nominated to the Senate, you're a senator for life.
Okay, Michael.
So, I mean, it varies in different parts of the world. The concept that the people voted for was that checks and balances, a second house.
Well, you're on the culture and educational panel.
No, I'm on, believe it or not, I'm on the agricultural panel now because of the changes that took place after I lost my seat back in the day.
You were on the culture and educational panel. And do you mind me asking how you qualified for that?
I was nominated by the Library Association of Ireland.
The Library
I had been chairman of the Leitrim Library. And also through broadcasting the media and whatever else, I fulfilled the criteria. In the context of the agriculture, it's a very broad. It was primarily because of agri-tourism. I was chairman of Falch Ireland, was heavily involved, particularly in rural Ireland, in the north and northwest, in the development of agri-tourism concepts and that, so I qualified under that.
Okay, Michael, a quick comment for you and then we're going to the floor.
On that one, it's an anachronism. The Senate, as it's currently constitution, it is an anachronism. It's our parliamentary system is very much based on what we took over from the British. There should be no forum in Ireland that pretends to be a representative body that doesn't have and has the support of the majority of the people. There should be no representative body where there are minorities, well-connected minorities, who are the only vote on it. Now, there are exceptionally good people in the channel.
Oh no, that's not. That's not the issue. Yeah.
How it's populated really has to be examined, and it has to be a more democratic body. Yeah.
I don't want to get into a debate about the Senate because, to be honest with you, I think it's over. The people decided on it. The interesting aspect of the debate about reform of the Senate, interesting enough, hasn't certainly centred around maybe a universal franchise. It has centred around giving a more representation to voluntary and community bodies in the Senate rather than a focus on how they're elected.
All right, I'm conscious there were more questions came in which you didn't get round to, but at various points of today, as we did yesterday, we'll go down on the floor just to give you a flavour of what's happening, to give you an indication of what's happening in the count. Incidentally, not a great crowd here this morning. It was packed last night at one stage. Before the announcement of the first count, fairly quiet here this morning, and we expect a surge.
Yeah, you had another question there that I had in my head.
Yeah, I'll come back to that in a moment. I just want to go to the floor. Claire Mulcahy is joined by Leitrim Fianna Fáil councillor Mary Bowen. Claire. Okay, well, the sound of silence there. We'll come back. We'll come back to Claire and Mary in a moment. And I know there was a couple of questions on the CF vote, which we'll get to as well.
It's been a good
Claire
day
and Mary
in Leitrim for today and yesterday for Fianna Fáil. What's your interpretation of the figures and how things are going?
Well, absolutely. Fianna Fáil have got a tremendous vote in Sligo Leitrim. I think I counted yesterday we had 20,200 around about first preference votes, which is very close on 2 quotas of votes, and it's nearly 33% of the total valid poll, which is a great vote for Fianna Fáil. Now, when you break that down, of course, we're in the situation here today where, well, there are still a lot of votes. I'm just on a quick calculation there. I think it's about 14,600 votes to be transferred. If you're talking about 2,000 from Susan O'Keefe and over 3.5 from Marie Castlery and over 4,000 from Declan Bree, and from Declan Perry there's 4,500 4,500 at the moment, and with obviously that might change slightly. So you're talking about a transfer of 14,600 votes at the moment from Sligo, which are all Sligo candidates, and where those transfers are going to go, and obviously nobody can foresee where they're going to go at the moment. I suppose the most significant of this will be John Perry's transfers, which are at the moment at 4,500, and with transfers in the other candidates that may go up. We could end up with one seat, and Fine Gael, if you like, could end up with two seats by default. Some could say by our bad management, but having said that, a sample was taken yesterday of John Perry's votes, and they were saying that of that sample, 50% at least were staying with Fine Gael. So obviously this would be a big boost for Tony McLaughlin and Jerry Reynolds, which would possibly put them in front. But it's all to play for at the moment. I mean, Eamon Scanlon is very much in the running at the moment, and there are a lot of Sligo candidates to go out. Our own candidate, Leitrim, got a very good vote. We're very happy with that. He did exceptionally well, and his team, for the short time that he had. And I think it's a lesson for party headquarters to get their act together in time. Putting a candidate on, I think, 4.5 weeks before an election is not sufficient.
And I know a lot of people here today are saying, he did poll significantly better, even considering how late he got into the race. He polled really, really well.
Well, absolutely, and I mean, Paddy is well known for his hard work and dedication. He's a wonderful councillor and great in all of the agricultural areas as well. But perhaps wasn't as well known in the north of the county as he would have needed to be. And if you take that, I think it's over approximately 1,600 votes. Fianna Fáil votes left Leitrim, roughly 1,000 went to Mark McSherry, and less than, I think it might be 500 or thereabouts, to Eamon Scanlon. So that's a big chunk of vote that went, and I suppose you can understand there was a big canvass done by the McSherry camp, and presume they're entitled to do that. The areas weren't divided up. There was no agreement on territory, so obviously it seemed to be a free-for-all.
So you feel the Fianna Fáil, management or the strategy there, you could. I know there's a lot of scenarios going around about the seats, but if you don't get two seats, it could have been obviously managed, in your opinion, better.
Well, I think right from the very beginning, I think that the Fianna Fáil party at headquarters, could have managed this whole thing much better. We had, first of all, Sinead Guckin went to convention, and then, for her own reasons afterwards, when she was going to be added, decided not to run. I think she felt that, Fianna Fáil were for women, and as she said herself, she didn't want to be a token candidate, and I don't necessarily agree with all of that. But
do you think she would have been a good candidate, and she would have done well in considering the changes in the constituency as well?
Well, I think any candidate in Leitrim, any Fianna Fáil candidate in Leitrim that came through the convention at that time would have had a good chance of getting out on the ground and getting working. Most of the other candidates have been working for a long time, and but Paddy came in so late. Now, I think if Sinead had come in at the same time as Paddy Rourke, she would have had a difficulty as well, because they wouldn't be really well known in the north of the county. But having said that, I think either would have been good candidates, and we're exceptionally pleased with the vote that Paddy Rourke got. But I think there's a lesson in it to be learned from one way or the other, whether we get two seats or we get one seat. I said lessons need to be learned from headquarters, and they need to listen to the people on the ground, which they are not doing at the moment, and I've been saying that for a long time.
And I know, Mary, I asked you before, I think when things were just getting started, if you would consider going yourself. It's obviously something you've considered over the years, but maybe just the timing wasn't right.
Well, politics, like everything else, is about being in the right place at the right time. And I've served for 36 or 7 years on the council. When I was elected first, Ray McSherry was very much our TD in North Leitrim, and an excellent one he was, and a minister. Following on that, John Ellis was there and served the people of Leitrim well for a long time. So the opportunity never presented itself. Now, I was asked by the party this time to stand. I didn't feel it was the right time for me, and I decided against it. And that's the situation. I mean, politics, as I said, is all about where you are and who the other candidates are.
How do you feel about the whole gender quota issue and, trying to get more women into the Dáil? What would your opinion on that be?
Well, I would dearly love to see more women in the Dáil, but I would like to see them there on their own merit. I didn't agree with the gender quotas. Running around the countryside parties at the last minute, looking for women to add to the ticket, that's not the way to do it. I think we have to give more encouragement to women to get into politics earlier, make it more family friendly if that's possible. It's very difficult for women, particularly in rural constituencies, because they have to travel to Dublin. They're away most of the week, and it's the nature of the business that it's not family friendly. But a number of women have made it, but I totally disagree with the gender quotas, and I think increasing the gender quotas the next time to 40% is a disaster, and I would suggest that should be changed.
And I know some candidates like Lucinda Creighton were trying to make it more friendly for women. She had some policies in that regard, but yet she lost her seat. So, is it still the case that women are not voting for women and maybe not supporting those kind of policies? I know that's a broad question.
Well, I don't ever think that there's a particular women's vote there. I think women, no more than men, vote for the best candidate, and that's the way it should be. So.
That's great. Mary Bohan, listen, thanks a million for talking to us today.
Thanks to Clarion, thanks to Councillor Mary Bohan. We're going to take a break for our 12 o'clock news. The count here is about 10 minutes away, the 8th count, distribution of O'Keefe's votes. A couple of tweets before we go. Marian Harkin, who was with us all day yesterday, says, "I'm so sorry not to be with you all today, but work calls. Great stuff to the panel. You're all playing a blinder." And there are many, many tributes coming in to Marian for her participation in our panel discussion and analysis yesterday. Hugh wants to know, it's a very good question, how come the constituency of Louth has 5 seats? It's the smallest county in Ireland, and Sligo, Leitrim, West Cavan and South Donegal, which is the biggest geographical constituency in the country, only has 4 seats. That's something we'll come back to after 12 o'clock. We might also touch on the gender quota issue, because there is a doubt as to whether the gender quota legislation has worked on this occasion or not. And then someone else, Izzy, tweets that Susan O'Keefe was one of the better Labour people. I hope she devotes herself to making Labour fit for decent people. Back with the 8th count after the 12 o'clock news.
And you're very welcome along and back here to the Clarion Hotel where we're still waiting on the council. We've Paschal here beside us at the moment. And Paschal, a lot of people are texting in and claiming that because Leitrim was separated back in 2007, that it's probably united the Leitrim vote. Yeah, absolutely. And there was a question here about now county in Ireland with a 5-seater, but it's based on population. It's based on population, and after every census, the government of the day sets up a constituencies commission to review the constituencies based on population shifts. And the most recent example has created the 4-county, 2-province bizarre geographical entity called Sligo Leitrim, but it includes South Donegal and West Cavan. And I and others were of the opinion that the Constituencies Commission, which by the way is an independent body, it was set up, rather interestingly, under Fianna Fáil when Jack Lynch was Taoiseach, following the 1977 election. That was the first independent, and it's made up of the clerk of the Dáil and the Seanad, and I think the Secretary General of the Department of Environment and Local Government. And they will look at the census returns across the country and will then decide on what's called a constitutional tolerance level. In other words, under the Constitution, so many voters per TD. And traditionally it's between, I think if I'm right here, between 20,000 and 30,000 voters. Traditionally, the lower level was taken, the lower tolerance level. It was on average, oh, here we go with the results.
Consisted of the distribution of Susan O'Keefe's votes of 2,192. Bree Declan plus 237, giving him a total of 4,402. 4402. Casserly Mary, non-party, plus 441, giving her a total of 4,138. 4138. Kenny Martin, Sinn Féin, plus 40, giving him a total of 7,028. 7028. McManus Chris, Sinn Féin, plus 63, giving him a total of 5,257. 5257. McSharry Mark, Fianna Fáil, plus 156, giving him a total of 9,705. 9705. McLaughlin Tony, Fine Gael, plus 528, giving him a total of 7,013. 7013. O'Rourke Paddy, Fianna Fáil, plus 44, giving him a total of 5,863. 5863. Perry John, Fine Gael, plus 207, giving him a total of 4,773. 4773. Reynolds Gerard, Fine Gael, plus 260, giving him a total of 7,314. 7314. Scanlon Eamon, Fianna Fáil, plus 88, giving him a total of 6,267. 6267. Non-transferable papers not effective, 128. No candidate has reached the quota on this count. As there is no surplus for distribution, I will now exclude the lowest candidate and distribute her votes. Marie Casserly, 4,138 votes, and the next count will consist of that. Thank you.
That was the 8th count. We'll recap on that in a moment. Just to let you know that Deputy John Perry has arrived in the count centre in the last few moments, and there's significant media interest in Deputy Perry, quite obviously, as there was yesterday with Mark McSharry when he arrived as the poll topper. So Deputy Perry has arrived, and we'll try and get a word with Deputy Perry in a moment. And obviously a difficult time for Deputy Perry and his family. Paschal, do you want to comment on the 8th count distribution?
Yeah, I was going to, I'm sure Noel will have a greater input into this, because he had been consistently flagging the fact that Marie Casserly, Fine Gael would be transfer friendly. Would be transfer friendly from Susan O'Keefe. I'm sorry, I was mixing it up there. Primarily because of the call, the agreement between Taoiseach Burton and Taoiseach Keaney in the middle of the campaign that they would transfer. So if you look at it apart altogether from the geographical imperative here, Tony McLaughlin got a massive transfer, 528 votes, which has
which you kind of suspected, okay.
Which has clearly put him out there.
Okay, I'm sorry, Paschal, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment because we have...
Delighted to meet you, John.
We have Deputy John Perry joining us in studio, just receiving the welcome from our panel this morning.
Morning. The team is here this morning. Hi, Johnny. Good morning. How are you doing? How are you?
And as we say, a difficult occasion for John Perry for obvious reasons. We'll just get John set up with a pair of headphones. And
how are you getting on? Doing all right. We're good.
John, you're welcome, and we do appreciate you joining us because we know it's a difficult day for you and your family and your wife Marian and son Jude are here as well. So it's a brave thing to do, I suppose, first and foremost, to come to the count.
Well, certainly delighted to be here and for all I have to say. That's what life is all about, really, and that's I'd like to congratulate all of the potential winners at this stage.
Did you know from an early stage that just things weren't working out your way, John, or?
It was a very good campaign. I must say that it's what the whole challenges in the campaign were. I enjoyed it immensely, and I suppose I've been very fortunate to have served 19 years in the Oireachtas. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of my Director of Elections, Thomas Walsh, indeed, and my Peter Mullen, Christy Murphy, and all of my campaigners and team who fought tirelessly. So really, that and everybody who voted for me, I think that I've enjoyed an extraordinary tenure. I suppose one of the longest-serving Oireachtas members. 4 terms, and has been an extraordinary privilege to represent the people.
Okay, and you really were fighting against the odds, and we won't go into what happened, but it was always going to be extraordinarily difficult for you, John, because of what happened.
Well, I think I'm not going into that today now in any sense. I'm just here to say that's what life is all about. That you congratulate the winners, and I think that I would really wish everybody the very best of luck in the future.
Okay, it's been a long time since the Gallooly Hall back in 1997, John. And I know how important that day was to you and your family because I remember talking to them back then. It's a long time, isn't it? 19 years as a dog.
Well, certainly I think when you get a privilege of being elected for 19 years, I think that is indeed a great honour, great privilege to represent the people. I want to thank my good wife Marie, and it has been my tireless campaigner and number one supporter, my son Jude, and my extended family who have been extraordinary supporter to me throughout. Has been a challenging period over a number of years, and I think that today is just to thank you to everybody, and I really enjoyed my tenure in Leinster House.
There were 2 things came across yesterday when we were talking about you and your career. Number 1, what a fighter you were in every aspect of the word, and number 2, what a hard worker you are. Again, in every aspect of the word, both in politics and in your personal life and in your business.
Well, work is my work ethic. I suppose I certainly find that it's a great privilege to represent constituents. I did my best. I fought issues that were difficult. I did my very best to anyone that came to my office. I was always very much ensured that if the best political representation could be given, and I feel that, and I want to thank most importantly the people who put their faith in me for 19 years. It has a period in my life that I will reflect with great memory, great challenges, great opportunities, and what a wonderful opportunity.
Okay, as we say, it's not a day for going into what could have been, but you fought as hard a campaign as you could have possibly hoped for, I'm sure.
Well, I just said it as I started. I think that it's a day to acknowledge the people who are going to win here today. I wish them very well in what will be a successful political career. It's very important that this constituency, a very large constituency, gets the best political representation, and I'm no doubt it will.
Okay, I'm sure Noel and Paschal and John have some. Paschal, first of all, what can you say to John?
Can I say, I said it on air yesterday and today, but I think this event, this moment, transcends politics. This is about the human dimension to politics. This is about a family man who gave his life and soul and commitment over almost 20 years to this constituency. So his legacy will remain, irrespective of the outcome of today. His legacy is there for all to see. And politics, we've all said, is a cruel trade. And I know to some extent, or empathise, let me say, with what the feelings within the Perry family right now, because I, as a scale of a political family have gone through more bad days than good days. I too have lost elections. All I would say is that we're dealing with a man here who is so full of integrity and who is so full of the passion that he brought to his job over the period of time.
But I would positivity, and John may not know
one of the things that
but
always impressed me about John, and I served with him when I came back into the Senate. He was chairman of the European Scrutinies Committee, and I served with him, and then he was chairman of the Ireland-Taiwanese Friendship Society, which was another aspect that he was involved in so many things. So we got to know each other very, very well. I've also said yesterday that there's a selfish parochial connection in that Marie and her family, the Mulvies, come from outside Drumshanbo. So I had a more than passing interest in the fortunes of the Perry political development. But could I say this, and it's not maybe the day to say it, but I want to say it on air. John, I hope that Sligo Leitrim, and particularly Sligo initially, will not lose as a result of what's happening here today. Eamon Scanlon lost his seat the last time, and he came back and stood for the council and became an elected member of Sligo County Council. Now, it may be everybody will approach this in a different way, and I hope he doesn't feel that I'm in any way being intrusive on the private reflections that he and his family will be going through over the coming days. But I would hope that at the end of that period of reflection that he may look at the legacy that he has left to this constituency, and that he still has more to offer. He's a relatively young man with vast political experience, and politics is such a strange game. I mean, just finally in a national sense, if you're looking where Fianna Fáil were or where they are, I would hope that John might not feel that his political career has come to an end.
We'll ask him that because I know he's in demand. Noel, just a quick word for John.
Well, John, look at, I suppose on behalf of Fine Gael, we're very sorry to lose the TD in the constituency, and John has been the Fine Gael standard bearer in Sligo Leitrim for the past 18 years or 19 years, and it is a big loss to John personally and to his family, but also a loss to the organisation, and in particular to South Sligo, the part that he represented. Every election that John fought since 1997, he has increased his vote, and he has, represented that area and the people of it very, very well. And he will be a big loss and a huge, will be missed dearly in that part of the country. But John, as I said yesterday, I remember probably meeting you. The first time I ever met you was back in the early 80s in Ballymote in what was the old Annette Hotel at the time. And John, after a long, long day working in his business in Ballymote, would come to the meetings in the Fine Gael meetings in the hotel. And I suppose from that point of view, I know John for over 30 years, but the one thing that I think everybody would say about John Perry is, we all know the saying about a glass half full or a glass half empty man. But I think John is a glass fully full man all the time. And I have no doubt that, John, that it's certainly not the end of the road for you in politics, and not the end of the road, certainly not for the end of the road in Fine Gael. And, while today is the end of one chapter, but it's probably the beginning of another chapter in your life, and I'd certainly like to wish you the very, very best of luck. And I hope to be meeting you as we have over the last 30 years for the next 30 again, John.
John, it's perhaps unfair to ask you that, but have you reflected on your future personally and politically at this stage?
Well, today it's a day of just to acknowledge my supporters, my family, and my friends who have been with me for the 20 years. And I think that that's the way life goes. And you just some days the ball hops, some days it doesn't hop. And I think that on that note, that's how I'd like to sum it up. The ball didn't hop on this occasion, so we're just on that note, I'd like to thank you, Niall. You have always been courtesy to me, showed me over the 20 years we had many an exchange. But I think that I believe to some I'm very happy with the tenure of being in this house for 19 years, and I think that it's great to be here with and for those families and who are now going to be celebrating the victoriously. I wish them well, and it's a day that they will certainly remember. I've enjoyed my time in Leinster House, and I think that I will be certainly over the next period in time deciding exactly what the next chapter will be.
Okay, I'd love to get you back to a bit of analysis, John, because I've met many analysts down the years, but you're never too far wrong, I can tell you, as you know.
Well, as I say, on this occasion the board didn't. I was on this. The board didn't happen this occasion. But I think that clearly life is like so. Just life is all a challenge, and this is a challenge. I think that I'm very fortunate. I have a very good wife, a very good son. I have my health. I have an awful lot to be thankful for. I think that the real bonus in life today is when you have 100% of your good health. I'm very fortunate in that regard. I have an extraordinarily supportive wife and a wonderful son. So to me, they're the most important people to me and my extended family. At the end of the day, really, the most important people to me at the end of the day are my good wife, my son, my extended family, and my good friends. And I have those, and I'm very fortunate to have them. And that's really, and very good friends. I want to thank especially my office manager Peter Mullen and Christy Murphy, and my former office manager Frank Brennan. I had some extraordinary Joan Rafferty dedicated staff over the period in that time and in Leinster House. So that most importantly, I think I'm very extremely fortunate to be in good form, good health, and I look forward just to that. To me is what is the ultimate goal of life, really.
Okay. Once again, John, many thanks for joining us. I know you're in demand, and the best of luck to Marie and Jude as well, and we do appreciate you joining us. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That's Deputy John Perry. He's been a TD since 1997 in Sligo Leitrim, and is about to lose his seat here in Sligo Leitrim, the new constituency, which is always a sad occasion for anybody, no matter what your political affiliations or none. It's always difficult. And as I say, John Perry's in great demand. It's been sought now by national broadcasters for comment as well. As he says, it wasn't really a day for him making any controversial remarks. It's just a day for him and his family to consider his future. As I say, well, we'll go back to the 8th count in a moment. It's always a sad day, Paschal.
There are people out there, because of the various issues that politicians get involved in, they do create divisions inevitably because they take a particular stand on things. And there are maybe people out there that are thinking purely political and saying, well, he did this or he didn't do that or he didn't do the other. But right now, I was trying to convey that this moment is about the human side of things. It wasn't really about politics, or it wasn't about what his record was, or whether it was the right one or the wrong one. John Perry, like all politicians, makes decisions, makes a call, but ultimately, in my experience in Leinster House, and I'm talking about all parties and none, the people who go in there do it for the very noblest of motives, for the very highest reasons. They want to improve society as they see it. And everybody is human, and if we looked into our own heart, I mean, the Bible, and it's a Sunday, talks about, he who or she who has the first, without sin, let them cast the first stone. So in politics, it's, as I said, a cruel trade, and that's what democracy in action. People make choices, and they made choices on this occasion, and John Perry has lost out. But I would hope that he wouldn't be lost to the body politic of this area.
Well, he said he'd take time out and see and reflect.
Well, it's not the time now.
Yeah, no, it's not. Today's not the day for. Before we reflect back on the account, Michael, as a constituency colleague of John Perry, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult. I think it's very, very difficult for John and for his family. I was talking to Jude, his son, last night, and I could see that Jude is so proud of his dad. I've no reason to doubt but that Jude will continue to have great pride in his dad. John has been under tremendous pressure. I know from experience now the hard work, the hours that's involved as a TD. And it's a very public thing when you put your name forward. He's been 19 years there. And it's very difficult. And my heart goes out to John and to his family. And I hope that the people in this region will not be dancing, that they will be kind in their consideration of John Perry and his family.
Okay, we'll be bringing Declan Bree into talk to us in a moment. Noel, you just wanted to make a
just to conclude on John Perry. I mean, I think John. I think while he's having a bad day today, I think he's very gracious in defeat, and I think he's taken the situation very well. And I think that should be noted. I mean, it is a difficult time for any candidate to lose their seat, but I think John is, he is at last more than half full man. He's at last fully full, and I think he's handling the situation very, very well.
Okay, as I said, we will get back to that 8 count. Declan Bree joins us now. Declan, thanks for joining us. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon. Well, your reflection on what has happened. You were shaping very well there yesterday morning. It was looking good at one stage in the town area, but
we were very disappointed. I suppose, as you say, initially the town has always been very supportive of Declan Bree, and we were absolutely thrilled and delighted with the type of result we were getting from the urban area and indeed the suburbs. But as you know, when we moved out into the county and into Leitrim, Cavan, we didn't gain any traction. Having said that, Niall, I think at the outset I'd like to thank everyone who did vote for me. Very, 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 very thankful to them, and I'd like to thank the small but dedicated band of election workers who did Trojan work over the last month. But it just wasn't our day. I suppose one of the difficulties was the number of independents that were standing.
And that's a point I think that our listeners were making earlier, that if there were less independents of the left persuasion, that maybe you could have made more.
I think we'll have to think that over in the future, needless to say. The branding, the right to change movement, it didn't get out there. I suppose it's too young a movement, and a lot of people didn't relate to it, didn't understand it, because in fact the right to change movement is supported by the Anti-Austerity Alliance, People Before Profit, Sinn Féin, and the left independents like myself. But the general public, it didn't ring a bell with them, and I suppose it was too late in establishing that right to change movement. God knows what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
The indications are that we'll have a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael coalition, and hopefully a merger of both parties, and I think that will realign Irish politics and will bring us into step with the rest of Europe, with a left on one side and a right on the other side.
Okay, and might give Declan Bree a better chance of being re-elected in future.
Well, certainly people will be able to see exactly the politics of the candidates who are going forward. I don't want to be critical here today, and I have to congratulate those who are succeeding. But Fianna Fáil have succeeded over the last while in presenting themselves as everything to everyone. They're past masters at that. I don't know if they can do that in the future if they're working with Fine Gael and if they merge with Fine Gael.
And in that context, were you genuinely personally surprised at the resurgence of Fianna Fáil locally and nationally in this election?
I have to admit I was. It's like the confessional, like that they admitted their mistake of 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and people are willing to clean the slate and start again. And by and large, it's the same organisation, it's the same party. But look, that's the public have spoken, that's their right.
Does that lessen your faith in politics and the political system? Or not?
No, I don't. I can't criticise Fianna Fáil for that. Maybe it's our fault, those in opposition, that we haven't managed to get the message across that Fianna Fáil did wreck the economy and that they cannot be trusted. We didn't get that message across.
Okay, you've known good days, very good days. You were a TD here for 5 years in Sligo, Leitrim, and you've known difficult days in elections as well. Will you come? And people were wondering this morning, will you come back again and run again in future?
Well, I don't see why not. I'm relatively young, I'm very active, I have a good support base, particularly in the urban area, and a good team. Clearly it will have to be expanded if we're to hope to take a seat. I also have to say that I very much sympathise with John Perry and particularly with his wife and young son and the family and all the workers who worked for him over the last number of years. I know what it's like to lose a seat, and it's devastating for a family, and it's devastating for all the election workers who support that particular candidate. John and I wouldn't see eye to eye on politics, needless to say, but having said that, I think there's a genuine sympathy here in the hotel this morning for John Perry, who's just about to be eliminated.
When you talk about expanding your campaign next time out, it might be sooner rather than later. You're conscious of that as well. You could be out knocking on those doors before the end of the year, the way things are panning out, Declan.
I don't think so. I know that's a possibility, but I actually believe that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will work together, and I think it will bring a realignment in Irish politics. I don't think the general public would be too happy if the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael don't work together, because basically, ideologically, they're the same. There's very little difference in their policies, and they have a mandate, or will have a mandate, it would appear, and they have to implement that mandate. Okay. Now, the positive feature is, or maybe it's not, but it would appear to me, and we were discussing this earlier this morning, that Fianna Fáil were telling us in the last number of months here in this constituency that they were in favour of getting rid of the water charges. So I suppose one of the first promises Fianna Fáil will now have to deliver on is to abolish water charges. And that will be generally welcomed by the public of all political persuasions.
And I'm sure you'll be quick to remind them if they don't.
Absolutely, and I'm just putting down that marker this morning.
Yeah, and you're usually very quick at putting down markers.
Yeah, I think it's important because the people will expect water charges now to be abolished if Fianna Fáil goes into government with Fine Gael.
Okay. Anybody want to say anything to Declan Noel?
Yeah, look, I just want to wish Declan well. He increased his vote this time around by almost 50%. And I suppose anyone that can do that is an achievement. It didn't work out in this time. But I was looking back over, on Friday before I came on here, Declan has fought a lot of general elections and probably has more experience than any other candidate in fighting elections. But look, Declan, just to wish you well in the future anyway. And if you're on the ticket again, I'm sure that increase might continue.
All right, okay. Michael?
I've known Declan for so many years. Many a time we went head to head on various issues, but I've always had tremendous respect for Declan as a public representative, and I think he's been very much a force for good in Sligo. I agree with his comments that if the broad left are to ever increase influence on how the future of this country is going to be run, to a certain extent we'll have to put aside sectional interests and work towards a common goal. And I think that the right to change is a start along that road, but I think we need to move beyond the principles of the right to change, and we need to look at how we're going to face the monolith that is going to be Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in this country, irrespective of whether Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael go into coalition or support for a minority government, a new Tallaght strategy. But I do think that there's a responsibility on people who want to build a new Ireland, to come out of our comfort zones, to look at the areas where we have in common, to look at the areas where we might differ, and coordinate our efforts an awful lot better than we have done up to now.
Okay.
But that opportunity.
Declan and I know each other a long time. Going way back to when he used to come up to Drumshanbo and my late mother to the Gralton weekend. And they used to hold it in Drumshanbo in what was then the Chockkiol, is now the Interpretive Centre down at Acres Lake. And of course we would regularly meet since I got involved in national politics. I was just listening to the points that he's been making about the political realignment, and I know it's for me to say what I'm going to say, particularly to those on the left, is probably going to sound hollow, a little like when Bertie Ahern, I think famously, as I think you were talking earlier, said about, he was a socialist wherever. If I could try and convey how different this Fianna Fáil party are, and will be now more different as a result of the newly elected TDs, an entirely new generation.
I'm sure Declan's having none of that.
I know that, but I just want to say it anyway. Having come from within the Fianna Fáil parliamentary party since the devastation of 2011, the party was effectively wiped out. Those who were left had to try and pick up pieces, and whatever the criticisms might be of the traditional Fianna Fáil, I'd like to think, maybe I'm being naive here, I'd like to think that Micheál Martin of the old cabinet, there's about Micheál Martin had question of Declan, does he see any attraction at all in the post-election situation for Fianna Fáil to enter into discussions with the left?
You just stole my next question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that sort of in my head is inconceivable, and I'd like to think that you were right, Paschal, but I don't. I don't trust Fianna Fáil, full stop. I don't like their politics, I don't like their ideology. I think, over the last number of years, in my opinion, they have been very, very close to Fine Gael in terms of politics. And in fact, they admitted, to my recollection, that Fine Gael were implementing their policies over the last 5 years. So we describe Fine Gael as quite a lot right of centre, to say the least. And Fine Gael was implementing Fianna Fáil policies of austerity for 5 years. So I think they'll find themselves very comfortable with Fianna Fáil in government. And Michael said, he talked about the challenge. There's a huge challenge now for those of us on the left. If this realignment comes about, if we have a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael government, it provides a huge challenge for those of us on the left and in Sinn Féin to work together to ensure that there is a real alternative in the coming months and years.
Okay, Declan, can I ask you a final question? Just how do you think it'll pan out here in Sligo Leitrim?
I don't know, to be honest with you now. Yeah. I wouldn't like to call it.
Okay.
No.
Thanks very much for joining us, Declan. We know you're busy. Thanks for coming in to join us. That's Declan Bree, independent candidate, Declan Bree, who's still, of course, officially still in the race. And thanks for that, Declan. Thanks for joining us. Okay, have we to take a break? No, we've no break to take yet. No, okay. Right, we haven't even spoken about the 8th count yet, which is only was half an hour ago because of Deputy Perry coming in and Declan Bree coming in to us. And I think I interrupted you, Paschal or Noel, in relation to that 8th count. Distribution. Well, Michael, do you want to take down distribution of O'Keefe's votes? What strikes you? Anything about that?
There seems to be a wide. There seems to be a wide distribution of the votes here. Tony McLaughlin, I see, was a big winner on it, and Jerry Reynolds was certainly did on it, and Marie Cassidy, they were the big winners, and Declan. I was a little bit disappointed because I remember when I was standing for election and Susan was eliminated.
Yeah.
I think, if memory serves, that I got a very good.
You did. We read it out there a moment ago.
And so I'm a little bit disappointed that more didn't go towards Chris McManus, Martin Keaney. I would have expected a little bit more there. I don't know what the reasons for that is, but that's
okay. Paschal, just on the account.
Yeah, I would think, Michael, maybe a suggestion that the agreement between Fine Gael and Labour midway through the campaign that they would seek each other's transfers perhaps might have had an influencing factor. Maybe.
That's probably accurate.
Whereas in normal terms and more traditional elections, you would have expected to have picked up more of a left transfer. That perhaps had and to be honest with you, I would have thought that Chris McManus would have got more.
I would have thought.
I mean, when you look at it, he got 63, which really isn't. It's very poor transfer.
I would have expected a lot more.
I would have been thinking he would have got more than that as well. And
when your rationale, your reasoning may be spot on there.
Possibly. That's what.
Okay, right, gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break and we'll reflect more on those O'Keefe votes, the 8th count and the 9th count, which of course is the elimination of Marie Cassidy. Maybe to reflect on her performance and where her votes are likely to go. Join us again in the Clarion in a couple of moments. Right, we're into the ground hurling, Paschal said before the break.
That's more or less
a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, because
the serious business is about to start.
Yeah, the business end. And maybe Noel, going back to his earlier comments about the potential of the Casserly vote, would perhaps have a better insight into where he thinks that's 4,200 are going to go.
Okay, just before we bring Noel in, half an hour for the next count, we're told. Half an hour.
Yeah, look, I'd expect that first of all, I think the Casserly vote will stay fairly local in Sligo, but I think it should come in good numbers to Fine Gael. I'd expect that Tony McLaughlin will pick up a substantial transfer from Marie Casserly's papers, and also I'm sure John Perry will pick up some, even though it's a bit irrelevant to him at this stage. But Mark McSherry will also pick up a considerable amount of votes. I'd expect the votes will stay local in Sligo anyway, with Fine Gael being the biggest beneficiary.
Okay, John, would you concur with that? Marie Casserly's votes?
Yes, I probably would, but before we move on to Marie Casserly, can I make a point about Susan O'Keefe there that might have been missed by the panel there on that? We see that Tony McLaughlin got 528 of those votes there, which was substantial given that the party leader, the Labour Party leader, asked for support for the Fine Gael candidates on it. But what surprised me there on it, and is it the female factor that came into play, was that Marie Casserly got 444, which was only 80 votes behind Tony McLaughlin on that there. So that was something that struck me as being very, very noteworthy there on that. Now, moving on to Marie Casserly, I think at this moment in time, Marie Casserly has had an excellent campaign there on that, and at short notice. All right, some people may say she had been campaigning towards this from the local elections in 2014, but I think realistically the campaign didn't start until the election was called, or maybe around Christmas time. So she has done very well, and it's also worth noting at this point in time is that Marie Casserly now is the first candidate to be eliminated who will be entitled to claim expenses having exceeded a quarter of the quota.
Okay.
So that's
all right.
That's beneficial for Marie as well.
Okay, well, she may be on a plane to Brussels, but she's still in contact with us, and Marian Harkin has tweeted in to say that Marie Casserly's votes will spread out, but it's crucial to watch the breakdown between Scanlon and Reynolds. And I'm sure you'd all agree with that. We had this discussion yesterday.
Yeah, he's gone up. I mean, the gap has now widened to 1,100 votes. I just say it's looking increasingly uncomfortable for Eamon Scanlon. That's why this Casserly elimination is going to have to give him some bit of a boost. I mean, he's going to have to get a couple of hundred votes.
Yeah. Well, so somebody mentioned, and I don't know if it's relevant, there is a family connection. Is there not?
There is, but I don't think that that's going to come into play. The geography and the politics of it is much more. We can go back to the family connections. There are Fine Gael connections. There are Fianna Fáil connections with the family. The McSherry connection. There's a McSherry connection with the Casserlys as well. So we can look at all these. The family.
I'm sorry I asked you that question. I might have known you'd find a connection to everybody, John.
The family blood connections won't make that much difference in the distribution, and the people who were marking their ballot papers certainly weren't looking at that. So I don't think that's going to come into play on it at all. And I think far be it from me to rule out Eamon Scanlon's possibility of being elected at this stage, but I really think that at this stage he will be the person who will determine in what order the final three candidates and which Sinn Féin candidate is elected.
Okay, it's getting a lot busier now here in the Clarion Hotel in Sligo. The Sligo Leitrim continues.
Sorry, I just agree with John. I just think that Eamon Scanlon really needs to get a bounce now. And the thing is that, and Noel will probably agree, is that Jerry Reynolds is going to get a portion of these votes, which is maybe that might negatise what Eamon Scanlon is going to get, but he needs to get at least twice as many as Jerry Reynolds is going to get, I think, for to be able to stay in here as a viable option going into the last seat.
Okay, a couple of questions coming in. A lot of people, and we've just discussed it, where will Marie Casterly's votes go? Could the panel provide analysis on Eamon Scanlon taking Martin Keaney out of the top four when O'Rourke is eliminated? Currently he needs 762 votes to pass him. Questions about the Shannon, we won't get into that now. Can independents get into the Shannon? They certainly can. And someone else says they thought there were very, very dignified remarks by John Perry in his interview this morning, reflecting on not being returned. And we agree with that, because it's a very, very difficult...
Could I just address, it's a non-party issue, the cystic fibrosis.
Yeah, sure, that was a question earlier.
Issue that came in earlier.
Yeah.
This actually was debated in the Senate in January, and originally the Deputy Leader of the Senate, Labour Senator Ivana Bacik, proposed that there could be an all-party motion or non-party motion in the Senate in order to respond to the lobby from the unfortunate sufferers of CF. And we in Fianna Fáil, when we saw the motion, believed that it was too bland and it was well watered down. It wasn't in any way critical of anybody. We believed that the HSE should have been directed to provide this very important drug for CF sufferers, which is effective. It would cost 92 million in the year for the HSE, but the HSE set their face against it, and as a result we framed the wording of a motion which was very simple, very straightforward, which was calling on the government to direct the HSE to provide this drug as a matter of priority. What happened in the subsequent debate here in this constituency, I heard Senator Susan O'Keefe when she was talking to you, and she said that there was an all-party motion. There wasn't. The motion that she was referring to was one that was supported by Fine Gael and Labour and by what were called the independent group, who were actually the Taoiseach's nominees in the Senate. But Fianna Fáil did not sign that motion. We had a motion of our own, and I would still be of the view that Orkambi, which is the drug in question, should be made available as a matter of priority. So I hope that answers the question in relation to the CF.
Okay, there are a couple of more questions come in which escape me at the moment, because there's so much has happened in the past hour. As we say, it's getting a lot busier here in the Count Centre now. As Paschal says, as we get into big business territory. A reminder again, you can watch us live. oceanfm.ie is the website. Click onto that and you can watch proceedings live. You can also access on Twitter at OceanFM Ireland, # Sligo Leitrim, or follow us on Facebook, Ocean FM Ireland on Facebook, and you can access the live feed by those means as well. And you can text on 083 3500 530, and obviously you can listen to us live online as well.
Just one final point in relation to that CF debate. Sinn Féin would have supported the Fianna Fáil position on that, Michael.
Yes, and I still think it was the right thing to put forward. Sinn Féin did support Fianna Fáil on
absolutely.
that. And I believe that the motion was a good one.
Yeah,
and should have been adopted.
Yeah, that's a matter of interest. Sinn Féin and Fianna Fáil have coalesced on a lot of issues in the Senate during our time there.
And in the Dáil, in fairness, you know, we
particularly on social issues of this nature,
on an issue by issue basis.
Yeah, well, will you coalesce in coming weeks? That's the question. But John,
a listener asked there about the theory of Scanlon when O'Rourke is eliminated by taking Keaney. Certainly that's a possibility. We've looked at it. Those that are at home are looking at it in the cold light of day and more relaxed surroundings, let's say, at home. I don't think it's going to happen, but it certainly could, because there are Fianna Fáil votes. But I still think that the Leitrim element, which we've seen being very strong in it, I think that Keaney will still outpoll Eamon Scanlon in the transfer from O'Rourke, regardless of how many McSharry gets or anything else. But certainly that possibility is still open.
Okay, the ninth count were expected at about 10 past 1, we're told, the ninth count, which will be reasonably significant, and they're still differing here on Twitter as to what these votes will break. Someone else says they'll go to the big party, sadly. My bet is in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael.
I'd be of the opinion, and I don't know if Noel views this or would agree with this, I think that Mark McSharry is going to pull a significant vote from it. Based on his track record so far of the distribution and taking the geography into account. I mean, he's been very consistent right throughout the count. The 325 that came from O'Hara, the 102, and Susan O'Keefe, that's the one that has prompted me to express this opinion. He got 156 votes from the Susan O'Keefe elimination, and I'm of the opinion that Mark is going to do well on the Marie Casserly transfer. I know John has a view on that.
It was easy to go to the door to actually canvass for Mark McSharry. He's an excellent candidate to canvass for.
Yeah. What do you think was the big difference between, apart from the national swing, was there anything different, do you think, between Mark McSharry's campaign 5 years ago and this year? Was there harder work put in?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, Mark himself has worked very hard in the last 5 years. And to the people in the national media, speaking on our behalf. So that was the first thing. So, and then after that, then his own campaign. He started that 6 months ago, or no, 9 months ago actually, and he got together a group of leaders, and we all worked very, very well together. So the campaign was very well run. But apart from that, Mark himself put in the groundwork, and we could find that at the doors. You know, when we knocked on the doors, and oh yes, Mark, he did this, or he spoke on our behalf, or
there was an awareness out there.
He was very active in the Senate, you know, in writing policies and that sort of thing. So he put the work in himself. Okay. He put the work in himself, and then he got a great team behind him.
Yeah, well, just on that, I remember talking to you when Micheál Martin was visiting Sligo. I think it was last November, and you were saying this was a new experience for you, being campaign manager.
Yes.
And it was. You've never done something like this before, was it?
No, but I suppose I have transferable skills, being a nurse as my profession, and then a lecturer in nursing, and but apart from that, I am true blue, true green. Fianna Fáil, in that I've been a secretary of the local Colreavy Common, and I've always actively participated in canvassing, etc. But the actual management, the bit,
which is a huge prospect, obviously.
Yeah,
it's such a huge geographic area.
It was massive. Yes, it was massive. But I do think my own background as a lecturer and a coordinator of courses and program director of courses, and my own background in working in intensive care and managing in a 16-bedded intensive care unit in Boston, that kind of
it all helped.
Kind of stood to me. Yeah, able to stand the stress and the pressure.
You, there are a lot of candidates around, and I'm sure analysts as well would like to have some of those transferable skills throughout the day. But anyway, he doubled his vote almost or so. Could you have envisaged during the campaign that he was going to return a vote like that?
Well, I secretly envisioned it, yes, but I, at the same time, because of the positive feedback and the mammoth amount of work that the team put in, every door, not every door was knocked on, but nearly every door was knocked on. I mean, and then the feedback from all of our canvass teams was very positive. So we did, I did have that hope, but then, in the face of the last failure, it was very hard to be, it was very hard to know whether that would measure when the boxes were opened.
Yeah. Okay, just a final point, and it's a point our panellists have made all weekend. It's a thankless job for a lot of people. I mean, there are long hours. It's voluntary for a lot of people. They do it because they believe in the system and they enjoy the politics and so forth.
Yes.
And there are an enormous amount of people involved in everybody's campaign.
Yes.
Who don't always get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, you mean all of us? Yes.
The foot soldiers, as they call them, and
the foot soldiers, and that's what I really got this time. The amount of coming home from work in the evening, and this is on everybody's campaign, I'm sure, and heading out without having their dinner, having that's all very healthy in our society, and that's what I'd like to see to happen. And I do think there was a lot of energy in our campaign in that way, and we did have a lot of people who came out and gave all of their time. And I must say, for me as campaign manager, I absolutely appreciate that team, and they were just marvellous to work with, and we didn't have a crossword.
Okay, well, let's hope your nursing skills aren't needed later on today as the tension gets a bit more intense around here. Anybody want to make a comment in relation to Dell and the canvassing? And I mean, you'll all appreciate that there's a huge amount of effort involved in campaigns.
Yeah, if I might, it is a huge effort, and I think Dell is right in the sense that we don't elect ourselves.
Yeah.
We have a huge number of people who are going out there on a voluntary basis, talking and walking and persuading people that this person who just represents the organisation. In some ways it doesn't really matter the personality who's elected. It's the policy behind the person. It's the ability of the party to influence the future for the better in this country. And it takes a huge leap of trust for somebody to say, I'll back this person to put that party policy out there. I think Mark has run an excellent campaign. Obviously, he's delighted with the return. Well done.
We can talk about after.